Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 2022 Sequelisers live stream. But it's not just the Sequelisers. We are joined by a very special guest this week. I am your host, as always, Jack Chambers. And joining me, my fellow Sequeliser, Mr. Matthew Stockton. How are you, Matt?
I'm good, thank you very much. I'm good.
And of course, our very special guest, one of the hosts and the editor of Modern Escapism, the DM and host of Do Dragons Dream, of Scorched Sheep. It's Gadget. Welcome to the show,
hello.
Gadget.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I saw you thinking for a second there. Do dragons dream of scorched sheep? Do androids dream of electric sheep?
I've been puzzling that question for weeks, for weeks and weeks.
It's a question the campaign may never answer.
It's a fucking brilliant title, by the way.
Thank you.
Did you come up with it?
No, it was one of the others that came up. I think it might have been Noodles that came up with it. It was when we were starting the D&D podcast. We had we spent about 2 weeks putting ideas across for titles. The only ones that we'd settled on beforehand were Dungeons and Dickheads.
I think that's already been done.
It had been done.
Yeah.
And I think Idiots in a Dungeon was the other one, but Do Dragons Dream of Scorched Sheep stuck.
Well, let's kick things off, and we'll be talking about Denis Villeneuve later on, which I'm very, very excited about, as chosen by you, Gadget. But why don't you tell the lovely viewers, the lovely listeners, a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Modern Escapism, and how it all came to be, and how you ended up here, basically.
Okay, well, a little bit about
your whole life up until this moment, basically.
Sure, condensed 35 years into a few minutes. So I was born in Newcastle. No, and Modern Escapism started. It was our little pandemic project. We were all on another podcast Discord. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Computer Game Show. We were on their Discord, and Oodles, who was our kind of host, he's been in podcasting for about 10 years or so, and he was kind of grumbling, griping that it was difficult to podcast with his current group because, pandemic, people not wanting to meet in person. He hated the idea of doing it online, so yada, yada, yada. And he was complaining one day. He says, does anyone fancy starting a podcast? And I went, all right. And it kind of went from there, and we kind of got a little collective of about 7 of us together, which over time got whittled down to 4 of us. And then we added another one to get us back to 5. Modern Escapism is basically exactly that. We don't talk about the news. We don't talk about politics. We very rarely reference what happens outside of our televisions or our computers. We talk about anything.
Escapism, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's escapism. We talk about anything and everything.
All the horror of politics and the real world.
Exactly, yeah. And that was the specific thing, because at the time it was kind of like, it was summer 2020 when we kind of started talking about it. And the news was so bloody depressing. And even though we were kind of allowed outside at the time, it was just, there was Trump everywhere and there was Boris everywhere. It just we were miserable with it. So it's just like, okay, explicitly, none of the news, no politics, none of that. So we talk about films, we talk about movies, which are the same thing, TV shows, games, films, books. I said films again. I'm fucking confused. Movies.
There it is.
There we go. No, we talk about everything, basically. Anything that we find entertaining. I've talked about going to the gym before there, and stuff like that. It's just whatever we do to kind of escape the work week or escape reality or what have you. And so we normally portion it up as we'll have a little bit of what are we doing this week kind of thing, where we'll kind of review something that we're doing or that we've started or that we enjoy or we're looking forward to. And then we have a main topic. And these can be anything like, last week we had you and Tim on Jack, and we talked about the best directors who've done less than 5 films, and we'll do a round table and bring something to the table. We talk about, we've had guilty pleasures.
I stole your pick, mate, which I still.
You stole my pick. I was going to speak about Martin McDonough. He just came in there, swept in there. So I had to scrabble around on the internet rapidly looking for another director.
Oodles came to me first. That's not my fault, mate. That's not my fault.
And I know
his wild Wild West style of hosting, where he just goes in a random order. And
he doesn't go in a random order. He goes in a circle as to who he sees first on Zoom.
Right, okay.
So he picks one and then goes clockwise from there. But yeah, so we have loads of subjects. Talk about our favorite video games or best tech of the 2000s. That was a fun one. Just being all nostalgic about MP3 players and shit, or mini disc players in my case, because I miss the mini disc. And And yeah, we just talk shit for about 2.5 hours every week. And then on top of that, we have Do Dragons Dream of Scorched Sheep, which is a D&D actual play podcast, which I'm right. I thought, in my arrogance, the best idea to get my friends to learn D&D was to turn it into a podcast. So we all started out having never fucking played it before.
Had you not played it before either?
We'd done a one shot as a special on Modern Escapism, which I'd written,
right,
which was our first time into it, and we had that much fun. We decided to take those characters that they rolled for that and put it into into a podcast campaign. So yeah, I'm building a world from scratch in a game I've been playing for 6 months. It's arrogance, the arrogance, but it's funny, and we apply like kind of a rules light approach to it. So we're not like Critical Role or not another D&D podcast or anything like that where they're shit hot on the rules. It's just like I'm the kind of DM where it's like, if it's funny, go for it. And we didn't intend for it to be a comedy podcast, but it's turned out to be really bloody funny.
I think with actual plays, you kind of have to go one way or the other, right? You need to be like, take it really seriously and go for the rules, otherwise all the nerds will tear you apart. Or go for it's a bunch of mates having a laugh. It's more comedy and the role playing is a key part of it, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when you first contacted us about working together a little while ago, and I was like, oh cool, yeah, I listened to Modern Escapism, and I was like, hold on, they do a D&D podcast, those bastards. I'm so jealous of you guys, because I know it's something we've talked about for years at this point, because the three of us are huge D&D players, and we're all DMs in our own right and all that kind of stuff, and we're like, oh god, we would love to do a Sequelisers D&D session and do a side podcast, but good lord, do we not have the time?
I don't have the time. I don't have the time to. I've got 3 episodes. I've got 2 episodes in the can waiting to be edited, and that's why I deliberately space it out over every fortnight. I couldn't do it weekly. But you've just given me an idea. We may have to have a discussion off the air.
Oh, there's a little tease.
How do you all fancy being villains for an episode?
Matt's dressed for the occasion already. Look at him.
Always.
He's got the twirly mustache.
Yeah, he's ready to twiddle that mustache.
I'm ready to ruin lives.
I'll find a reason for there to be a train track in a fantasy middle-aged world.
Yeah.
Turn it a bit steampunk, maybe. It'll be fine.
Yeah, there are moments like that in D&D,
Yeah, exactly. You can let steampunk towns exist. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and like I say, it's just us being really stupid and having a laugh, and I think that's what works best for it.
That makes sense. Some of you may have noticed. I noticed the chat is lighting up. No Tim, I'm afraid. Scheduling conflicts and stuff. He got stuck trying to basically sort out some personal stuff, and he's not able to get back in time, so he's not joining us today. He's fine. He's not ill or anything like that. He's just off somewhere else and unable to connect to the internet, basically. So don't send your best wishes to Tim. He's fine.
In fact, send your worst wishes.
Send your worst wishes.
Send your finest assassins.
Exactly. Also, you were pleased to hear some Geordie pride going on in the chat there, Gadget.
I see James Wilson there, fellow Geordie.
Fellow Geordie, where's James Wilson? Sounds like a fellow Geordie there as well. Good old James. Two regulars, Canis and James for us. And we've got JFC, one of our EPs in the chat there as well. Vincent Gain as well. Lots of regulars joining us. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is maybe one of my most anticipated episodes because, God, I can't wait to talk about Denis Villeneuve. And I know he's come up a lot on our show, and we talk about him all the time as like, who would you have direct this thing? I'm like, might be Denis Villeneuve. That might be a good shout.
The thing is, half the time that you suggest Denis Villeneuve doing anything, you do risk taking him off something excellent that he's done.
That's the problem, though.
Yes. Giving him like, should I put him on some really mediocre, ridiculous sequel? We wouldn't get something of the most amazing cinema I've ever seen, though. Yeah, but this could become the most amazing
Sicario from being made. Oh shit!
Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah, but there'll be like Sicario 2. It's fine. It's not that bad. How we improve it? Bring Villeneuve back. Yeah, but if you do that, he doesn't do this project or X, Y, Z, and you're like, oh, do I sacrifice a rifle or Blade Runner? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, realistically, it's Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah. But Denis Villeneuve is a topic I'm always keen to discuss, and I was so interested when you brought him to the table, Gadget, because we kind of had an internal discussion ourselves of like, oh, it's such a good choice, but we kind of need a minimum amount of films to kind of make our tournament bracket work and stuff like that. We thought, do we include the French language films? Like, we need ideally like 8 or either 16, and then kind of narrow it down to one of those to make the bracket kind of fit and all that kind of stuff. And then we thought, yeah, fuck it, let's go and see some French films. I hadn't seen any of his French language films before we started organizing this episode and kind of thinking about it and discussing it. But I'd seen all of his English language films, some of them multiple times, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this. But I think it's going to be real tough. How are you feeling since you've picked Villeneuve, and how are you feeling now you're actually on the show and realize you actually have to pick amazing movie versus amazing movie? Do you regret your decision already?
I realized the folly of my arrogance on this one. No, it's fine. It's fine, because the thing is, the guy's made wall-to-wall bangers for his entire career. Like, apart from the two French ones that I haven't been able to watch due to my internet cutting out today. Thanks, Virgin. I've seen 8 of his 10 films now. The 2 French films that I'd seen were his first 2 films, and you can see the germination of like all the stuff that becomes his hallmarks later on. Yeah. But they're wrapped up in this weird, studenty, overwrought, overwritten kind of thing sometimes. But you can just see from day one, from August 32nd on Earth, from the very beginning, that he's always had that keen eye. He's always had that, the way he plays with scale, the way he uses soundtracks, the way he uses shadows and silhouettes, especially. My God, that man loves a silhouette. And yeah, you can see. And I didn't really enjoy Maelstrom that much, but it's a good film. You said on our podcast, it's a film I didn't like, but it's a very good film, if that makes sense. I did enjoy watching it.
Yeah. But I know we talked about the kind of difference between what's good and what's your favorite is such a key factor for us on Sequelisers, because we talk about bad sequels and then it's like, well, I actually quite like this one, or oh, I didn't like this one, but it's actually well made, or something like that. That's such an interesting discussion to have, especially with film, because I think you really have to get into that kind of nitty-gritty kind of stuff when you're talking about somebody of this caliber, where you're talking about, I mean, they're all like brilliantly made and have such interesting vision and cinematography and scripts and blah, 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 blah. So you really have to go like, but I like this one slightly less, so I guess it has to be my pick.
I think, again, it's the separation between logical assessment and an emotional assessment, and the idea that you're like, yeah, this is functionally fantastic on a technical level, it's great, the storytelling is amazing, the performances, everything is working, firing on all cylinders, but I didn't feel that that little soupçon. There's something there that and it's such a personal thing, which I think this bracket is going to come down to a lot of like, well, they're all good, but this is the winner. It's like, why? Yeah, I can't actually tell you. That sort of logic, that sort of defies reason kind of thing. It's like, because I feel the most about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think Villeneuve as well, he's very good with, especially ones he's written himself, with writing unlikable characters that you root for.
Yeah.
There's a few, especially in his earlier films, where they're objectively awful people, but for some reason you're rooting for them by the end of it.
Yeah. And that's a really transport thing. If you can create someone that you, within a very small space of time, i.e. a film, introduce you to an individual, explain why they're not a good person or you don't like them at all, then not necessarily redeem them, but you want to further their journey, you want to get to a good place. You see that with, like, for argument's sake, The Sopranos. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's fantastic. I want to go this whole journey, and it takes a long time to get there. Or Breaking Bad, a long time to get to that arc and that full completion. Whereas it's like, yeah, we got 2 hours, go. That sort of thing. And equally focusing on really hateful, horrible individuals, but you obviously are not rooting for them, but you're very curious how their story unfolds and how they got there and so forth. So yeah, he is a brilliant craftsman. I think everything he's produced. I mean, Maelstrom we talked about earlier. Maelstrom starts with a fucking a talking fish who's being cut apart while it's alive,
and then resurrected to continue the narration.
Exactly. And I think there's something. This sounds really strange. So being a British audience, you hear the French language, you immediately go, France. It's like, no, French is spoken in so many countries and continents, and the same with the English is. But we're very arrogant as British people, like, well, it was our language has gone around the world. We colonized it. Yeah, most European nations had huge colonial presence and impact, so the language spreads. So with obviously his stuff, you think, oh yeah, these are clearly French films. Like, no, they're Canadian films. Having said that, his style does feel very European. If you told me he was like from, Germany or Poland or France or anything like that, or even Britain, it's like, yeah, that makes complete sense. He doesn't seem to have that North American sentiment. Even in his big budget studio production stuff, his smaller, intimate things, or his independent or just early stuff, there's still that presence throughout of something that's, yeah.
There's a lot of art house in his style. There's a lot of, it's those... I think, and it's something that I know American film directors don't tend to do, but it's like when he shows someone who's like drunk or who's taking drugs or something, he does those really strong close-up shots with the blurred edges.
Yeah.
It's like you don't get that in American cinema. You tend to get that in European cinema and stuff like that. He's also very willing to show people drunk and vulnerable, as opposed to American cinema, which is drunk and fighty or drunk and shouty.
Well, you get the drunk and funny, but you don't have to get drunk and tragic, which is, I think, something that particularly European filmmakers and Europe history with alcohol in general, we have that kind of built into us, right? Of just like, oh yeah, alcohol's great, and until it's not, and we're not afraid to kind of explore that. And I think that's a really interesting thing we touch on, because for the first couple of years I was aware of Villeneuve as a filmmaker. I assumed he was French, and not French Canadian.
Yeah, same here.
I just didn't even think about it, because I was like, oh, this is really like kind of European kind of style of filmmaking. Yeah, that makes sense. And Denis Villeneuve, he must be French. Actually, I didn't look him up, didn't even think to. I think it was just probably a couple of years after Prisoners came out, because Prisoners was my kind of introduction to him. So this is probably sort of Prisoners came out in 2013. This is probably like 2015-ish, because I knew Arrival was coming out and I was interested in Arrival. Yeah. And Sicario, I didn't even know was him, but it was obviously around about that sort of time in 2015 as well. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen this Prisoners movie. I've heard good things about it, and I kind of looked it up and blah 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 blah. And like, oh, some French guys made some American movie. Cool. Didn't even think about him being French Canadian, or like, he'd had a previous kind of half of his career in a different language or anything like that. Like, probably should have thought about that, Jack. You idiot. Like,
I think the other thing I've noticed as well is his films tend not to market very well.
Because, no shit.
Well, no, not in terms that they don't make money. It's just that I think that the studio marketing companies don't know how to advertise films. So that's with the exception of Dune, because everyone kind of knows what Dune is supposed to be.
It's Star Wars, but not Star Wars.
Big space thing.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, it's what Star Wars. It's what Star Wars ripped off.
No, it's ripping off Star Wars. Meh, said the nerds who don't understand that it comes out. I saw a lot of those people.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them as well. So when I came to this process, the two of his Hollywood films that I hadn't seen was Sicario and Prisoners, which I've obviously now since watched. Now with Sicario, I remember seeing the trailers for it and all the marketing posters for it. I thought that was more of an action film than it was. I didn't expect this kind of very tense, slow-baked, almost conspiracy drama kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it, but it was not what the posters and kind of the trailers that I'd seen back when it came out implied it would be. I thought it would just be another kind of gung-ho American anti-drugs war kind of film.
Yeah. I remember seeing the advertising for Sicario, and for some reason I had kind of connected it to End of Watch, the David Ayer film, and just being like, oh, it's a similar kind of vibe, right? It's two like police officer-y kind of things, and like there's going to be some action and some crime drama and stuff, and it's like, oh no, it's a much slower burn. It's a much more introspective and interesting perspective on like borders and politics and philosophies and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is my kind of filmmaking. Who is this guy? I need to know more.
I think there's a very distinct parallel with another person who gets shouted out a lot on our show, with David Fincher, and that he also is one of those individuals that produces amazing content that tends to be quite difficult to present most of the time. Sometimes it's very easy because like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Well, we've seen a couple of these beforehand. People read the books. There's a lot of visual stuff we can throw in there to make it seem very exciting, intense, and so on and so forth, and yada, yada, yada. But I think that comes out of Alien 3 being so, oversaturated, overproduced. Fight Club and Seven being so, and to be fair, Panic Room being so kind of missold in what people were sort of expecting from this movie. And I think he has quite a bit of creative control over how it gets promoted, basically. So I think you're entirely right, Gadget. It's the idea that his films don't make huge bank. Even when he does big blockbuster stuff, every one of them is like, well, this is a failure. It's like, by what metric exactly? But
because it didn't make $1 billion.
Everything
must make $1 billion now.
Yeah,
otherwise it fails.
I mean, just for example, I'm looking at. I've got Dune's Wikipedia open, just to have notes and be prepared. And the budget on that, 165 million, and box office is just under 400 million. Like most in Hollywood would say, of a film that big, that's a failure.
That's the thing, and that's such nonsense considering it's such a aggressively difficult film to get into. It almost ostracizes most of its audience. It's like, I'm not going to slow down for any of you. You're either here, you're sitting, you're watching all of it, or you're not in at all. Pick one. And because everyone's like, well, I think this is good. Everyone keeps saying it's good, and you actually think this is immense spectacle. It's crazy. It's absorbing. It's pure cinema. You get drawn in. But for the regular, I put it this way: I know Warner Brothers are after they're always after more franchises in the same way that Disney have certain franchises. You want the money
studio isn't these days.
Exactly. But Warner Brothers have DC opposite the Marvel stuff. That's their main clashing, and they both handle it differently. Whereas Star Wars is this big big Disney property, and they have Dune at Warner Brothers, and it's like, you could do this in a way that you could do so many sequels, full saga stuff, more than Star Wars has potential for, because of the fact the books are there and it's clear and it's beloved and mental. And also you could do so many spin-offs and TV series and things, which I think they are planning to do. It's just
there's rumors of a HBO Max series that is going to be Children of Dune, I think.
Possibly.
Something like that. I can't remember. It was all announced at the same time, and there's the Bene Gesserit standalone thing and some other bollocks, and it's like, yep, okay, take it, run with it. But I am kind of the fact that we're kind of here with Star Wars at the moment, that the fact that Book of Boba Fett is going on, and the fact that people have been clamoring for Boba Fett story for 30 fucking years at this point, and then it comes out and it's like, it's all right. Wow. We're really kind of burnt out on Star Wars, haven't we, people? Jesus Christ.
Well,
we finally saw him come out of the Sarlacc pit and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this is the moment we've been waiting for since fucking the 80s. Oh my God. Since before I was born, this has been in people's minds of just, oh no, what's going to happen to Boba Fett? And it happened in the books and the extended universe and in the comics. And that bit where they touch on it in other things, the robot chicken stuff. He comes out of the Sarlacc pit. They'll do that in the real thing. I don't know if they will. And then they just do. And nobody fucking cares. And everybody's favorite episode of Boba Fett is the one that features Boba Fett the least. And it's like, oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's this fascinating thing where I think they've almost pushed Star Wars to the brink. Yeah. I think they certainly have with the Skywalker saga for me. Obviously, we've talked extensively about Rise of Skywalker and how...
As have we.
Yes, exactly, yeah. It's a big piece of shit that is, and how that kind of killed my love of feature-length Star Wars for the foreseeable future. I'm like, I'm fine if we don't get another Star Wars film for a few years. You can just leave that's fine. And I'm really glad they are going off and doing weirder stuff like Visions and other things like that, where you get these kind of non-canon, almost to use an MCU term, multiverse kind of stuff that's going on, and being here's as if it was shot by Akira Kurosawa. Here's a weird other anime thing. Here's this musical thing. Cool.
Do you ever imagine how smug the Disney exec who sat there and thought, this is a big brain moment. We're just going to uncanonize the extended universe. We don't need any of that. We'll write our own stuff, and just getting rid of all of those wonderful stories that they could have adapted and written into wonderful films and TV series.
They're just cherry picking bits and pieces to be like, oh, I like the name of that planet. I'll have that.
Yeah.
Oh, Darth Bane. I like a bit of Darth Bane. He'll show up in Rebels for some reason. You're like, wait, what?
It solely comes down to, I know this is going to be sounding very corporate and boring, I'm sorry, but it is down to, why would I want to promote anything that I don't have any access or rights to that's not going to give me any money? So I can take bits and pieces because the universe, I can do these name drops of Thrawn and all this other, that's very interesting. I can cherry pick what I want, as you say, but then it's like, so how do you get into this? Well, to see this, you have to read this comic or read this book. Do we own the rights to that? Well, no, not in written form. We get any profit for it? No. Then fuck it. And so, and then that's the cynical corporate view. That's the mindset. Yeah. So scrap it all. If you want to buy your own collector shit, go for it. No problem at all. But here's the new canon. It's like, are you actually going to have a plan for this canon though? Yeah, we're going to put something in a comic, and then say something different in a film. Right. That's not a canon, then, is it? That's either unreliable narrator or just bullshit, and you have no idea what you're doing. We'll figure it out later. Star Wars.
Anyway, Abrams to do it.
Yeah. But Villeneuve.
We'll bring back Abrams, yeah. So we have a couple of questions and kind of a running theme here from people talking about Villeneuve in the chat. One I particularly like to highlight is from Dr. Gain here. If Denis Villeneuve were to direct a future MCU entry, what would you like it to be? I feel like this is a whole other fucking episode. We could spend another 2 hours discussing this. Not that we've already done 11 hours of talking about the MCU and speculating and stuff anyway.
Content.
It could be part of your next interseason.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we already have a couple of other suggestions. Jonathan's in here. A Daredevil. Interesting. I can kind of going for the Sicario, more grounded kind of vibes.
As the big Daredevil fan, I'm going to shake my head and say no. Not saying it's the wrong answer. I'm just saying I wouldn't like it for Villeneuve.
Ernie Collins coming in here. I could have imagined him doing Moon Knight if it hadn't been a series already. Yeah, interesting. I can see him going in a few different ways. Obviously, we've got Dune Part 2 coming up next year, and then also the pre-production in sort of production Rendezvous with Rama. The Arthur C. Clarke sci-fi epic thing, which I absolutely love Arthur C. Clarke stuff, so excited for that. He's just going back and like remaking and filming all of my childhood sci-fi books. That's fine by me.
The thing is, that's absolutely fine, because when there has obviously been a lot of great sci-fi since sci-fi became a thing, but especially the 60s sci-fi, the 60s written sci-fi. Okay, take away the fact that they have very, very wrong ideas of the role of women on spaceships. Yeah. Arthur C. Clarke, not a friend to women, but because Star Trek and Star Wars hadn't been a thing at the time, and people didn't have a visual language for science fiction, the books were endlessly creative. Like in Rendezvous with Rama, I love the descriptions of the inside of Rama.
Yeah,
absolutely glorious descriptions. Not much happens in the book in the grand scheme of things, but there is so much description that is just glorious, and I cannot wait to see how he puts that into film.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Note here from speaking of Rendezvous with Rama, James Wilson here. Just finished a reread of Rendezvous with Rama, and I'm excited for Villeneuve for that gig, as I think he's perfect for it with his grand, epic cinematic style. Couldn't have said it better myself, basically. Well said, James. Yeah. I do wonder then, because of the relative success, like you said, Gadget, and not necessarily the financial success, but kind of the impact that Dune is having, and him then going on to work on an Arthur C. Clarke thing. Like you said, that kind of pre-Star Wars sci-fi stuff. Are we then kind of pigeonholing him into that kind of, go and remake all the classic sci-fi stuff, and he's just going to be the epic sci-fi guy for the rest of his career?
I mean, I don't necessarily think
he started off with...
Yeah, I don't necessarily think so, because the film he's doing after that is Cleopatra, which will be a historical epic.
I think he's the kind of auteur who's like, I'm just going to do this now. And people are like, yeah, sure, go for it. It doesn't necessarily, as long as he's passionate about it, that's the key thing. And so we're like, give us more of the science fiction, give us more of this. And he's like, I'm going to do this now. And the thing is, nobody should stand in his path. It's like, I want to do Cleopatra. Why? That famous, I mean, every time someone tries to make a version of Cleopatra, it loses a fuck ton of money. It's like, yeah, but you know what? I'd like to see his version of it.
Yeah, me too. I also think he's attempting to be the 21st century Ridley Scott. Just looking at the kind of films he's taking on sci-fi, he's taking on some classic ideas, he's trying to do historical epics, he's trying to do really interesting think pieces. And basically, as long as he doesn't turn into an angry boomer, I'm fine with it. as long as Cleopatra doesn't come out like
stop watching things on your phones.
Yeah, as long as Cleopatra doesn't come out like Gods and Kings, I'll be really happy.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I think it's a fair point. I think because also you have to remember that fascinating. I say it's fascinating. It shouldn't be a fascinating thing, but it is. Across his entire career, from his first film onward, Villeneuve has stories with very prominent female characters. And I mean, have actual agency, actual story, and even the way that you could really mishandle Jessica in June. And it's like, no. He knows full well what she is and how front and center she needs to be and how pivotal she is. Obviously, Sicario, you got the story of all these bits and pieces, but really it's told from the perspective of Emily Blunt's character. Blade Runner dips a bit in that regard, but that's a different thing. Arrival, female lead. Prisoners, again, really weird to take away. But more importantly, Enceinte is that kind of stuff. There's all these interesting takes, and then Polytechnic we'll come back to later as well. Very important for that angle and things. And I think that's something, another Ridley Scott link, because everyone's like, are you the right person to be directing Thelma and Louise? Should you really be directing The Last Duel? And it's like, turns out yes, because you're going to present it in a way that's going to draw, for lack of better phrasing, the average male viewer in. And then say, hello, are you sitting comfortably? Yeah, I'm looking forward to this movie. Okay, just so you know, there's going to be a lot of subliminal stuff you're not prepared for yet. It's like, I'm sure it'll be fine. Hopefully you're going to learn something, actually, fucking clown. So that's that sort of interesting parallel. The only difference is Ridley Scott, as we've seen from our previous streams, is like this. He is up and down like nobody's business, whereas Villeneuve is straight across the board.
Yeah. Ridley Scott is one of the most hit and miss fucking directors. He's made some of my absolute favorite movies and some of the best movies ever, and then a bunch of shit as well. And it's just, I can't get over what a weird kind of dichotomy that man's career is. But yeah, so far, I think Villeneuve, and I said it in our little teaser clip I did earlier on today, I don't think he's made a bad movie, and he is probably my favorite living director working in film today. Like the fact that he has made some of the best movies of the last decade, and beyond that, even before now going back and watching his French language stuff, is still really interesting and compelling in very different ways. And I think his journey through his career is so interesting to me, because you touched on it earlier, Gadget. He's gone from kind of like very grounded, very real, and he maintains that realism and that kind of grounded feel, even as he gets, goes from like, $1 million budget to $200 million with Dune, basically. It's fascinating to see his evolution of his imploring philosophy and cinematography and stuff, and blending it all together and still maintaining a voice through the last 20 plus years across multiple different genres, working with different DPs, working in different studios in different genres. It's so impressive to see his growth. And it's almost like how I would imagine like the perfect career trajectory of like a really visual filmmaker is like, start with weird small stuff, get your feet under you, do some like really interesting out there stuff on low budget where you can basically do whatever you want, but make some really interesting, compelling, smaller movies, and eventually get noticed and break out in the West and do bigger and bigger stuff and get more and more mainstream appeal and more interest from bigger studios. And it just seems like, to me, that's kind of like the dream, right? To start off doing weird shit and interesting stuff, and then eventually being like, here you go, here's Dune, the best-selling science fiction novel in the history of science fiction, your childhood favorite book. Here's $200 million. Do what you like, Denis. And he's like, yes, please.
Well, there's a brilliant parallel again with someone like Gus Van Sant, who is very much an independent darling, as it were, except the difference is his closest foray with mainstream is Good Will Hunting. But rather than doing what Villeneuve has done and keep escalating, building to do, I want these projects, I want to do this, Van Sant's like, no, I want to tell these different stories. And so when peeked his head up for a little bit, whoop, and then back down again, actually, I'm doing my own stuff, that kind of thing. I think there's an interesting parallel there. I should say, as much as we are gushing like, swine over this, just because everything on the internet is permanent, just in case Villeneuve comes out as one of the most awful human beings.
Oh no, don't.
I don't think he will in the world. I don't think so. But at the end of the day, it would be genuinely heartbreaking because the man's art is spectacular, and it's one of those things. Like, I really hope nothing happens. But again, we don't know these individuals personally.
Don't
but
put that energy out into the world,
Matthew. Out there.
Oh,
just in case. Caveat.
No.
At time of recording.
Whenever we talk of people, they tend to die. So if you put that energy out there, something will come out, and
that's true.
Something horrible will happen, and I'll just be like, that'll break my heart. I've had enough heartbreaks from pieces of shit making art that I love that I now can't enjoy because they have terrorized the lives of people over the years.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, for fuck's sake. Obviously, I'm not turning myself into the victim in any way, but it's a weird situation to be in now. Now we're kind of in this post Me Too movement kind of era where more people are more comfortable speaking out, and as you know, and as I know you guys do on Modern Escapism, we totally support that in every single way. Absolutely, tell your truth, and we believe you. You don't need to, all that kind of stuff. You know what we're talking about. But yeah, please, Denis, be a lovely person. From all the interviews and stuff, he seems real cool and real nice and stuff.
Yeah,
but you could say that about a lot of other people that turn out to be monsters.
Every interview I've seen of him, he always comes across very well, and he comes across like a lovely guy. I think what makes me less worried about him turning out to be some kind of hidden puppy killer or something like that is that, or rather, more respecting of the people he works around with. I was watching a kind of behind the scenes video of Dune, and it was Denis doing a interview, like showing off the scene with the Gom Jabbar.
Oh yeah. On the Vanity Fair. Yeah.
And he's talking about it, and just the way he talks about Charlotte Rampling and that, he's constantly talking about how amazing she is, how wonderful she was to work with, how Timothy Chalamet was scared of her because he only ever saw her in costume and stuff like that. And like he's so good at talking about his actors when they're not with him. Like you'll see some directors who will be really complimentary to their actors when they're on a press junket with them.
Yes.
But then you see them talk about them in other terms, and they're like, "Oh, I really didn't like him," or "Oh, he was a dickhead," or whatever. But no, he just genuinely seems to surround himself with people he really enjoys working with, and you can see in the credits he works with a lot of the same people over. He works with there's about 2 or 3 cinematographers he tends to work with.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of Hans Zimmer. He tends to have a lot of the same people around him, so he seems to get like these really good relationships and stick with them. So I think he's a very good person to work for and a person to work with. At least that's the impression I get from the outside.
I would agree. And obviously, we can only comment from an external point of view. We can only comment from how we've seen things portrayed. But it is a very positive sign that he speaks respectfully about the properties he's working on, the people he's working with. And it's not fetishized. He's not saying, "Oh, she's so good." It's like, okay, it's genuine, like respect for the craft.
You do get those red flags from some people sometimes, don't you?
Tarantino. Tarantino is just a red flag. He's just a walking red flag.
Big red flag. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, from interviews I've seen with whether it's Timothée Chalamet or Jake Gyllenhaal or whoever it is, people talk about working with him and how interesting he is, and the way he ergonomically and economically shoot stuff to lessen the impact on the mental health of the actors he's working with and stuff like that.
That's a
I know he's talked about to save money, we need to do a longer take for this thing because it costs money to cut and then reset and then cut again. So we're going to rehearse the shit out of this, and then we're going to actually do a proper dress take, and we'll do 3 takes and that'll be it kind of thing. Whereas you hear some directors I can't remember who we were talking about the other day, Matt, where it was like, go again, go again, go again.
Kubrick.
And it was Kubrick. Of course it was Kubrick. Who else is it going to be? Where we talked about The Shining and him just drilling Shelley Duvall into tearing her own hair out, literally, and just being like, yeah, we got that take. Let's do it 15 more times just in case. It's like, oh yeah, just really, really high stress, horrible, fucking unpleasant scenes to be in with Jack Nicholson, who is off the wall, probably on cocaine at this point. Oh god, yeah, let's do that 15 more times. Or we could just, shoot it. And from what I understand, doing research for this show and the interviews and stuff, because like I said, been a big fan of him for a few years now. The stuff I've read seems to be very positive from a working perspective, as well as the stuff that he's producing, which is lovely to see. Because I do worry, like, you see a big thing like Dune and you worry about people hanging out in the desert for like weeks and weeks at a time and just fucking hating their lives, and midnight shoots and all this kind of stuff, 15-hour work days and all that kind of stuff. But it seems like it's yeah.
Sorry to interrupt there. There's a weird interview with when they were on set and filming. It was before the film came out, and it's Momoa saying and he was highlighting that he'd never been pushed harder than he had on this film. It's like, but what? I mean, I'm not. You mean in terms of acting or physically? It's like, okay, you've done like a couple of Aquaman performances. I feel like they'd be quite demanding. It's like, no, because Denis would say, "Run," and it would be like, we need to get this. He's been reason, and again, Momoa would do it, but it wouldn't be like the casual like, "Run, you go fucking," the very controlling director. It's like, it's the idea of, I need you to run across this desert, and it'd be a really big thing, and feel in a certain way. And he said, I've never run so much on a set in the desert, the sand. I'm thinking to myself when I watch the film, like, does he run a lot in that movie? I don't remember much of it, because
there isn't a great deal of him running across the desert.
No, you shoot like 4 hours.
Duncan Idaho's mostly in a corridor, in a room, hanging out for a bit. Yeah, he doesn't do that.
A little
much.
Bit outside.
Yeah,
there isn't much.
Yeah, him rehearsing the fight scenes and things like that. Obviously, you're like, oh, that makes sense. No, running. It's like, I don't remember you running. But then also, they might have been shooting footage for a part 2, so we might see it.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Speaking of which, we actually should get to the bracket at some point, just because I feel we're going to have a lot of moments that are going to really drag us out here.
Yeah, we definitely are. Let's unleash the bracket, shall we, gentlemen? Let's do it. So, as I said, we've narrowed it down to 8 films, all of his English language stuff, and 2 of the 2 most highly rated French movies that he made as well. Here we go. Ba-bam.
Release the bracket. Do you think it's Liam say that for us at some point?
That needs to be recorded as a sample for a soundboard.
Yeah. Release the bracket. Although, to be fair, terrible film. This is I was wargaming this earlier. It is a difficult bracket.
Yeah, I did I'd be happy with that. And then I did it again. I was like, I'd be happy with that as well. I can see that winning. Like, fucking hell.
Let's do some Zoom, just very, very quickly work our way around just so people can see. So
if you do have any particular favorites or bets you want to make in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, please do get your bets in now. Basically, choose winners, choose a finale, whatever you want to see from both sides. Now you know the brackets, you can get an idea of the finale. So
we've got Incendie, which is from 2010 versus Enemy from 2013. Little fun fact for you: Enemy was the first English language film that Denis Villeneuve shot, but it was released just after Prisoners, which is a boring fact. Right, down at the bottom here, we got Blade Runner. Same year. Yeah, the same year, but just like, this one happened to be filmed first, but because of more independent release schedules, like, it got tipped. And also, it's a weird film. Blade Runner 2049 versus Arrival. Over in the top here, we have Dune versus Polytechnic, and finally the bottom, Prisoners versus Sicario. There are 2 other films that have been mentioned, which is August 32nd on Earth and Maelstrom. They are not present because it's not a clean bracket, and also because we were very much of the mindset that these are the big 8 films, if I'm honest, and that's Maelstrom's a weird one. Maelstrom is, for lack of a better word, his most French, in my opinion.
It very much
it's
is.
a full-on a bit of a Jean-Pierre Jeunet vibe at times, a bit of a dark satire / thriller / comedy, sort of.
Yeah, he says it's a dark comedy, but it's you have to be probably a very dark person to find a lot of it funny.
I found some of it not funny, so I'm one of those individuals.
Yeah, I found a few things.
We know
funny.
you're fucked up.
It's fucked up though, but it's fucked up humor. A fish literally being peeled apart, going, "Was you?" I'm like, that's funny. Like, oh no, that's traumatizing. Oh, sorry, that's traumatizing.
It's also one of those few films I've ever seen where I thought this is too short. Like there were some things in it. It needed maybe an extra 15, maybe 20 minutes into it to space some of the events out because it's a breakneck
It's not
speed.
even 90 minutes long. Like, it's real tight filmmaking.
Yeah. And
got some early predictions in from the chat here.
Yeah,
Stuart Baker, you might recognize that name, Gadget.
Yeah, it's Stig from our
Stig.
podcast.
Revealing the real names here.
Yeah, he's using his Sunday name. It's obviously what he signs into on YouTube.
Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Sorry, Karen.
Stuart Baker.
From Masking People.
Stig is predicting Dune versus Blade Runner 2049. Jonathan Firth Clark is being a bitch about it and not actually picking an answer. Prisoners or Dune or Arrival or 2049. That doesn't fucking help, John. Like, what's that?
Are they the four that you've seen, John?
They're all good. I don't know. Like, that doesn't help. I'll call Arrival winning from General Pandemonium there. I predict Dune from Dr. Gain. Interesting. Calling Sicario to win from Stuart Main, famous hater of Blade Runner 2049 and Mad Max Fury Road, because he's a fucking maniac. That's why. It's a running thing on our Discord, and now we've said it out loud. Stuart's going to go mental in the chat. He hates Mad Max Fury Road and Blade Runner 2049, two of the best films of the last decade.
He just needs to be put out to pasture at this point.
Don't get me started. He's a brand new dad. We can't now. It's not
that means he's got a legacy. It's fine. No offense, dude.
Oh yeah, that means we got a backup. That's fine, actually. Yeah, let's do it.
We have an heir.
Arrival is brilliant. Thanks, John. Nice committal there again. Brilliant. Yeah, they're all really good. Doesn't help, Jonathan.
I mean, to be fair, they are all really good. There's one on there that's like, that's a 50-50 one. People might find it a bit divisive, but outside of that, every one of these is a fucking masterpiece. It's not, you usually say, here's some ones to watch. Watch everything Denis Villeneuve has done. Even if you don't like it, there'll be something you can take from it, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, that tracks. Like, I would still recommend people watch Maelstrom. Like, just because I didn't personally enjoy it, it doesn't mean it's not worth watching.
Yep, agreed. Stuart reacting, catching up on the live stream here, just wow, in the words of Owen Wilson.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very interesting to see a variety of predictions already. And I think that kind of says what we've been saying for the last 45 minutes is how incredibly difficult it's going to be for us to drill through these and kind of make our picks as we go.
Do we have a favorite Denis Villeneuve film each?
I did wonder who's going to be the first person to fuck up the word Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even sure that's how I'm supposed to be pronouncing it, but
I tend to pronounce it either Villeneuve or Villeneuve.
Villeneuve. Yeah. Dennis.
Good old Dennis.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite between you guys?
Top of my favorite at the minute is Dune. It might be because it's the most recent one released. Might be just because I absolutely adore the novel. I also I have a little poster up there of from when because me and Stig went to the Odeon when it first released, and we got lovely Timothée Chalamet posters as we left.
Tim brought me this. It is, in fact, not what you think it is. That's David Lynch.
Yeah. and yeah, I think it is also just one of my favorites simply because I remember seeing the David Lynch Dune, and finding it utterly incomprehensible. And the book is pretty.
Had you already read the book at that point?
Yes, I had read the book at that point.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Incomprehensible how you could take something like the book, which is fairly dense anyway. Like the first 100 pages of Dune are hard. But you're rewarded with a brilliant story. But that David Lynch film, my God. Oh, it's so bad.
I have a soft spot for it, but I know exactly. I'm not going to defend it because I know exactly where you're going from.
I think for me, you can watch it ironically and have fun, but it's not a good film.
I think those fucking shields in that movie are just the cubes are so mental and not CGI, done by hand on film.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Was it rotoscoped or something like that? Or did they just draw direct onto the film?
Yes. Yeah. It's literally rotoscoped by hand, cube by cube. Who thought that was a good idea? Fuck me.
There is a quote from that film. I'm not I'm not going to say it. I don't want to trigger it. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to get anything out there. But there's a quote from that film that Tim will shout at me, and it will send me into fits of giggles, and I'll just keep screaming it back at him. So that's the thing for you guys all to figure out. What's the quote from David Lynch's Dune that drives Matt into hysteria? Maybe one day I'll reveal it. Maybe one day I won't. I'm not going to tell you my weaknesses. That's stupid. Yeah. So I think here's a tricky thing. I think Dune is my favorite, but I think I saw somewhere in the chat. Somewhere in the chat. Sorry, that it's like it does suffer from being a part one, and that is my only other problem. Because as a film experience, as a narrative, my favorite is Incendie. So it's like, and I'd go so far as say Incendie is probably also his best film. So, gonna
bold,
be
Matthew,
cracking out
bold.
some bold shit.
Yeah.
But that's opinions. It's opinions. It's pure opinions.
Even people picking their favorites. If I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be Sicario or Dune. Nobody can make up their mind. Oh my god!
And that's why we're gonna suffer.
We are going to suffer. I am sorry for what I have wrought upon your live stream.
Well, put it this way. I think there's one of those things whereby we could do this and we'll come to an answer. And we've done this so many times in the past where we go, how have we ended up here? How is this the finale? How was it these two? No one would have... And then because you just had the conversations and the arguments, like, I guess I've got to vote for this. And there's three of us, obviously. So it's a fascinating process. And as you say, that's why I like to think it's nice to name our favorites or what we think might win or the things from the top, because what we end up with can be as obvious and predictable as like, well, yeah, obviously it was going to end up here. But other times you're like, this is insane. How are we about to say insert name here is the best Villeneuve film? Anyway.
I mean, we did this on Modern Escapism last year, where we did a just the best film ever, and it ended up between The Thing and Jurassic Park.
I mean, to be fair, that is a very good.
That's top two, mate. I agree with you.
Yeah,
guys.
I can't discredit. I mean, that is very driven by millennial nostalgia, because I think if you ask just outside of those generations, they'll say, the fuck are you talking about? But having said that, you could definitely argue those cases perfectly on both of them. So I fully we picked Jurassic Park as the best Steven Spielberg film and nearly got crucified for it. So
that's what we picked as the best film ever. So
and did The Thing win John Carpenter? It did, didn't it?
John Carpenter won with The Thing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we'll have Jurassic Park versus The Thing at some point.
Oh god, whatever wins here has to go into the fucking huge list of
champion of champions. Yeah, that's a thing, Matthew.
Future Matt, that's a future Matt's problem. Present Matt has to deal with this one target in front of me. So, fuck me. Right, let's do some zooming in.
Anyway,
so I'm going to just assume outright that most people haven't seen most Villeneuve films, or have seen a cluster. So we're just going to give you some insulting stats to start with. Incendie from 2010 and Enemy from 2013. Dramatically, okay, it's fair to say every single one of Villeneuve's films is very, very different in terms of the subject matter, but the tone, the general flow of something that feels like it's important and grabs you by the lapels and says, you have to watch this, is present through all of them.
There is this weird connective tissue, right? They are, like I said, he's spanned multiple decades and multiple genres and different styles and techniques and all this kind of stuff. But there is inherent Denis-ness to them all that is just like this palpable, grounded, believable reality, whether it's mad bullshit like Dune or much more grounded stuff like Sicario. You get the kind of dense philosophical, theological concepts that are still sprinkled in there, and even visually there's connective tissue there. There's him working with, as you said earlier, Gadget, a handful, even less, of cinematographers that he loves to work with, and bringing on some of the best people, some of the best sound designers, some of the best composers, working with Hans Zimmer, working with Roger Deakins, all this kind of stuff, and just being an absolute auteur in the complimentary best sense of the word, because that word is thrown around a lot, especially now with, people talk about Snyder and Nolan and Spielberg and all these kind of like big modern titans of movies. And I think Villeneuve is absolutely up there. He may not have made as much money in the box office as the rest of those guys, and probably never will unless Dune Part 2 is fucking huge, which might be. You never know. But yeah, I think he is absolutely up there with somebody who has a very clear vision when he goes into it. And I'm always impressed by the amount of influence he has, even on big projects like Dune. You can still tell it's Villeneuve's Dune and not just like he's doing a studio movie. He's just, ticking boxes and that kind of thing. There is still his art in there somewhere that I really, really appreciate from him over the last 20 plus years.
Definitely. No, I always get the impression with Villeneuve that he is very much the guy that goes to make the pitch with all of the detail. Like he goes in, talks to the studio execs. I want to do Dune. This is my favorite book as a child. I've read it 17,000 times, however many times, and he just walks in with the design document, with storyboarding, works out the budget ahead of time. Says, we can have Hans Zimmer. I know he'll cost this much, and we'll need him for 6 weeks or whatever. And he works it, and he just says that number is exactly what I need, and he probably comes in slightly under it still. I get the impression that he just can dazzle the studios. He's just got, and again, when you see him talk in interviews and stuff like that, he draws you in. He's a very charming and charismatic person.
If you haven't seen or heard interviews with Villeneuve, I highly recommend it. Not just because he's got a cool, sexy French accent, but he's got this like way of talking about films. You really, really can tell he's a big fucking nerd that loves movies. And when he talks about Dune and how much he loves Dune, and he was like, I've been wanting to make this film since I was like 15 years old. I've been trying to make this film for 30 years, 40 years. He's in his 50s now. And he was like, I need this to be the film that I make, and they offered it to me, and I leapt at the chance. And he referred to they had copies of each actor, and most of the crew had a copy of Dune, and Villeneuve's personal copy of Dune he considered the Holy Bible that he would refer to during the writing process, during the editing process, during coloring and filters and stuff, because it's got that weird kind of. It's grainy on film, but there's a digitalness to it that they purposefully dialed back the graininess. But there is little moments of like film artifact that make it feel old, but digital enough that it feels modern. And it's this fascinating blend of the two that is, I wasn't sure if it was a conscious decision or not, but turns out everything is a fucking conscious decision and it all works. And it's like the fact that he has that like attention to detail is such a huge thing for me. Whether that's, novelists or comics or video games, fucking professional wrestlers, I don't care. If you have an attention to detail and you care about what you're doing, chances are you're going to get my attention, and I'm going to care about what you're doing as well.
Yeah, and care about what you're creating.
Yeah, exactly. You can. I feel like you can often tell when people are just like, I was just I made another fucking film because the studio asked me to, and blah, 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 blah. That's what Dark Knight Rises is, motherfuckers. And
or
you get that kind of thing.
Nolan is always thrown around as an auteur. And it's like, he is. He's a very talented filmmaker. But Nolan had a very different career path, a very different trajectory, different projects. And yes, he's also doing similar. Because again, people say, Villeneuve and Nolan, they're like the same thing, right? It's like, no. No. What we're talking about here, and I don't want to insult Nolan too much because he's still a very, very capable and very, very good filmmaker. Gets a bit up his own arsehole, but then everybody does. It's the sense that one of them is giving you an extreme. Okay, I'd say Nolan is giving you the very fancy chain brand version of fried chicken, and you're like, it's not just KFC or Nando's. My God, this is amazing. It's like, no, it's the same fucking fried chicken. It's still chicken. He's just putting it in a really fancy bucket that's made of porcelain, and you're convincing yourself it's really, really good, even though it's the same components inside it that's in like a Michael Bay movie. It's like, no, this is different. No, it's just he's restructured the order of the. It's not necessarily cleverer than you think. It's like, okay, what about Villeneuve then? Villeneuve is the food truck that ends up becoming one really, really amazing restaurant there's only one of them, and it's in one city, and you have to go there, and so no one's really visited, but everyone's heard about this fucking restaurant being amazing, and you can never get a table there. That to me is the difference. One's more accessible, and it seems highbrow and seems really intense and really inaccessible and amazing, and that's Nolan. And one truly is the real fucking deal, and that's Villeneuve. I think that's the best way I could.
Yeah, seems apt. I'd go with that. Yeah.
With a nonsense analogy, but we're getting ahead of ourselves because we've got two films that people haven't seen in front of us. I'm not going to give much. I know Jack's probably got a lot of stats here. I'm not going to give you much of an overview because I do genuinely feel most people will have seen a handful of these. So we're just going to give a brief praising.
We've had a few people in the chat being like, "I've seen 2 of these. I've not seen any of them. Oh, I'm pleasantly surprised. I've seen half," and stuff like that. So
yeah. So we're not going to ruin stuff because I think some of the most important points about these movies are how the story unfurls. Because again, the tense atmosphere, the presentation, that's all definitely part of it. But for some of these stories, it's how they progress and or end. So yeah. Encendies. A woman dies and her kids have to carry out the instructions in her will. And they find out that apparently their father they've never really met is out there in the world, and they've also got a brother somewhere out there in the world, and they've got 2 little envelopes, and they have to deliver it to each respective individual. And their mother, who they thought they knew, had this whole different life in an unnamed Middle East country. And it's dark and miserable and flashes back and forth, and it's intense, and it's beautiful. Enemy it came out at the same time as The Double, the Jesse Eisenberg one directed by Richard Ayoade, and it's a doppelganger film.
Oh, yeah.
And it is it's a bit of a Gore Verbinski at times.
Oh.
Because it's kind of this thing where it takes you to this almost fictional world that doesn't feel real, like a separate reality, almost like a Lynchian look at our own existence. It doesn't sort of sit right that it's real in terms of how the color palettes, everything how it's presented. It's a really strange, and again the dialogue, the presentation, the Jake Gyllenhaal plays both these individuals, Adam and Anthony, if I remember correctly.
Adam and Anthony,
yeah. Adamant, if you will, and he gives this great dual performance, and there's so much weird shit in there because every time you think to yourself, "Oh, I've got a handle on this movie," it's like, "Oh no, that's just kind of creepy, weird moment." It's one of I'd say his most inaccessible movies.
Yes, agreed. It's also arguably his scariest, as Dr. Gain says here. If you're arachnophobic, don't watch Enemy.
Yeah,
which I am. Lot of fucking spider images.
I am severely arachnophobic, and there were several times throughout this film where my girlfriend had to tell me what was happening.
Yes,
yes. I had a similar experience with Emma, and I had it on the screen, and she looked over my shoulder and was like, "Don't look now. There's a big spider." And she was like, "What do you mean by?" "Oh my god!" I was like, "Yeah." I didn't mean just a big spider. I meant a big spider.
Yeah. There was one spider moment that happens. It's literally like the last 30 frames of the film.
Oh, I know.
And it caught me so off guard.
Shit me right up. I'm not keen on spiders. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but spiders.
There's spiders. Glass and get rid of them. They're spiders, and then there's Enemy. This is
yeah. No, and again, this is what we say. We don't want to get into too much which will possibly ruin the film because there are certain visual and story beat reveals. You go, "Fuck me! Oh god, no. Okay, that's just kind of fucked my mind for a minute here," and you just sort of pause or end the film and go, "Right, So that's all we'll kind of roughly say. Jack, do you want to give us any stats that you may have? Because I know usually
certainly dive into Encendies from 2010, 2 hours and 10 minutes long. A 92%, get used to big numbers here, ladies and gentlemen, 92% on the tomatometer from 123 critic reviews, and also a 92% on the audience score side of things.
Yeah.
Encendies is fucking great. And to go over to Enemy, a bit lower this time. This is, I believe, the lowest of our 8 films, with 71% from the tomatometer from 122 reviews and 64 on the audience score, a runtime of 1 hour and 30 minutes, coming out in 2013.
Low with 70s, goddamn.
Low with 71, still certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's still far too low for that
the
film.
Lowest. It is. I think people were scared of it, and rightfully so. And in a kind of, I don't really get this, what the fuck is going on kind of way, which I think can put a lot of people off.
Yeah, Enemy's a pretty impenetrable film if you take it on face value. It's like it's a film I've seen it twice now. But it's a film that both times I've seen it, I end up sitting and thinking about it a lot. You know?
Yeah, and that's the kind of piece it is. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's not something where it's like standard beginning, middle, and end linear story. It's specifically not that. It's more. I don't want to sound wanky about it, but it's more cerebral than that. It forces you to think about the actions that happen in the film, and work out.
Well, welcome to Villeneuve.
Yeah,
we're talking about cerebral and wankiness because yeah.
But I mean, I'll say I haven't seen it on Sundays. I was going to watch it today, but my internet died, as I said earlier on. So there's two films on this bracket that I haven't seen, which is on Sundays and Polytechnic. But yeah, which makes things difficult, but it's fine.
We always run these things, and we always have a plan. We're all good, man.
Yeah, Enemy. I think it might be one of Jake Gyllenhaal's finest performances, and it might be because he's effectively playing two roles in it.
Because performance will always bring out so much from an actor.
Because Adam and Anthony are so different from each other, and it's fascinating that there's only 2 scenes I think where they're together, but where you see how differently Gyllenhaal plays both characters. Even just the stance, the way he speaks, there's even just the confidence in his face. I mean, it's even the point they have the same haircut, just one style differently, ever so slightly differently.
100%, yeah.
And
it reminded me of the Christopher Reeve Superman performance, because I know that's something you always talk about as like, how the fuck did anybody not work out that Clark Kent is Superman? And then you see Christopher Reeve like, oh, gee, Lois, I don't know about that. I'm Clark Kent. And he's like, I'm Superman. And he's a foot taller and no glasses and his hair changes and like the shoulders go back and his chest puffs out. And you're like,
it's just a little bit. He looks over his glasses and he goes, dun, 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 and he just straightens up a little bit. And his face seems to warp because he goes, it's just acting. Acting.
Yeah, that's really what Jake Gyllenhaal is doing here, and it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah,
because it's like even like down to the two of them having different speech patterns.
Yes.
Which works towards the reveals towards the end of the film when the weirdness kind of starts to happen.
Yeah.
I loved it. I just think it's absolutely fabulous. And a low 70 score on Rotten Tomatoes is far too low for it.
I'd say it's if you take away the arachnophobia, because my wife is terrified of spiders, and it's one reason she hasn't seen it yet. If you take away like dream angle, alternate, like is this real, is it not, sort of stuff, and just the general absurdity of it, there's a very deep film here, very atmospheric and very engaged, and a very confident film. The problem, I think, as well, is it also came out in the same year as Prisoners, which was a very straightforward film for audiences to understand. And this one was distributed badly, and it was like, well, is it getting a release or not? It was such a... I think when it came out in Britain, it didn't come out in the cinema. It only came out on straight to Blu-ray and DVD. I think there might have been a limited release, possibly, in certain independent cinemas, but it was a hard one to get access to, basically. But that doesn't rob it of anything, because the opening shots of this... I don't think it's not a spoiler at all to say, but there's an opening shot of this sex club, and you're like, what the... Oh. What? Oh, you just, again, you are drawn in. And any other filmmaker, the shots he uses, the choices he makes, the long, slow emptiness of it all would be boring or dumb. You're like, do something. But because of sound design, because of music, because of the cinematography, the performances, he's got every cylinder firing on everything. It's like, I have no idea what this is, and I kind of can't look away. So yeah, magnificent.
It's got some of his best uses of city shots, I would say, because like he makes Montreal look. Is it Montreal, Toronto? I forget which one it is. Whichever city they're in, it makes it look alien.
Yeah.
He's picking up all this brutalist architecture mixed with some modern architecture. So many kind of upward shots making Adam look so absolutely tiny, in the world, showing like how insignificant he is.
Yeah.
Even the university that Adam works at, you get these shots of these long corridors or these huge concrete buildings just juxtaposed against himself, and it's absolutely marvelous to see how he can take something as static as a city and give it that character.
I think that's the same. Again, just to draw that same parallel again, it's Fincher with something like The Game or Panic Room or Fight Club in the 90s and early 2000s. It's that kind of like you've kind of transported us to something that's recognizable and yet not. It's mentioned in the chat, but yeah, it's Toronto.
It's Toronto. Yeah.
To flip things around for a second, Ensemble is the film that got him noticed by everyone. Because this was, I don't think it actually did get through. I can't remember, but it was really prestigious. Got a lot of awards and things, and it was going to get on to be
nominated for the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film or whatever it was.
Yeah,
so
okay,
that's why it kind of got that recognition in the West, in
exactly.
the English-speaking world.
Yeah, and so subsequently he's like, "Oh, let's give this guy a couple of things to work on," and he did Enemy and Prisoners around the same sort of time. Ensemble is. If you have some of his big science fiction, psychological epics, shall we say, even I include Enemy in that as well, and that sort of like deep psychological dive. Ensemble is one of his most grounded. I'd say it's one. So it's one of the most grounded. And harrowing, absolutely harrowing.
Absolutely, yeah.
It is a masterclass in tension and family drama, and I've seen this kind of film done before multiple times by any nation that has experienced just war and tragedy and influx of refugees and things. And it's like, did a load of awful, horrible, hideous shit happen, while you were fighting for, against, or with your country? Yes. See parts of Russia's history, parts of Germany's history, parts of, Asia, all of the, like Japan and China, all these different pieces. India, especially, everywhere has had moments where people have been suffering on the ground, child soldiers, all this sort of stuff. But while it's telling the story, and it is a fucking hard watch at times, it's also got this simple, relatable, emotional drama of twins who don't know their mum the way they thought they did. And it's like, I never pieced this together. And again, it's that infallibility of a parent and the idea of a child saying, you didn't really have a life before I was born. I know you as my mother. That's how you are. That's how you always will be. And then you learn that this individual had a life and experiences and some of the most harrowing, unpleasant sort of stuff. And you're like, oh God. And coming to amazing conclusions by the end of it. I'm trying to say as little as possible because I recommend it so highly. And there's a reason, by the way, because of the seeded bracket that we do this, the order it goes in, John Scarrett produces his amazing visuals and stuff, and this thing works beautifully. But it's placed in order of like best, highest rated to lowest rated. And these are the top and lowest rated films on here according to our list. And it's brutal.
That is IMDb rating, by the way, because that is not the case for Rotten Tomatoes. There is something higher than Ensemble in Rotten Tomatoes scores. I will say
precisely.
That
I think it's a tricky case because again, thanks for Ensemble being how many eyes are on it based on exposure and all these sorts of things, and more importantly for me personally, getting a hold of the bastard, because obviously I've got my beautiful Blu-ray collection and a very extensive DVD collection, and Ensemble is really hard to come by. It's just not available. And like elements of like Bong Joon-ho's career until before he won the Oscars, like you can't find it, you won't be able to get a hold of this, you will really struggle, that kind of thing.
Ended up having to watch it through the BFI player, so if you are in the UK like the three of us, you can watch it for they have a 2-week free trial and then you can pay for more, but there is a bunch of cool stuff on the BFI player. We're not sponsored by BFI, even though we've done coverage for their film festival and stuff previously, but that is how I watched it. And that's also how Polytechnique, which we'll get onto later on, is also on there as well. So, an easy way to watch, and relatively easy way to stream them and find them without hunting down physical copies online.
Space them out. That's all I'm gonna say. You're gonna need time to think about some stuff. Shall we get to voting, gentlemen?
Yes.
So, what we usually do, I'm sure Gadget is aware, is because Gadget hasn't seen both of these, kind of exclusive this one. So, but I would also say, is there anyone even in the chat who has seen both of these films? That'll be the first question to sort of put out there, because it's like usually if Jack and I say one for each, for argument's sake, and Gadget can't comment. He's like, "Oh, my vote would be this," but I haven't seen both. I can't really say with all earnestness. So you go to the chat and you go, right, chat. And usually there's one or two people. With Villeneuve, I don't know. I honestly don't know if anyone's seen all of them. So we have one.
Ernie Collins has seen neither. Jonathan Firth Clark, nope. But we do have Dr. Vincent Gain saying he has seen both. So that's good to know.
I should point out, we still count all the votes anyway. People haven't seen it. People vote they want to. So we're not
people just go nuts anyway.
Count,
in classic Xenos fashion, he's back, ladies and gentlemen. One of our EPs. I don't think I've seen anything in the bracket. Brilliant. Thanks, Xenos. Very tips of you, mate.
Yeah.
Thanks for your contributions.
Yeah. But either way, watch all of these films. They're spectacular. Okay, well, okay, so let's just start to voting, and we'll see if we need to go to the audience.
I'm starting off. I'm diving straight in. Anson D for me, please, Matthew.
Boom, same, no problem here. Okay, good.
There we go.
That will not be a running theme, but there we go. That's now locked in. Again, absolutely no discredit to Enemy, and we'll say this for every single film on here. But no discredit because they are superbly made.
Enemy is incredible, but traumatizing. So do beware.
Very traumatizing. Yeah,
arachnophobic. Yeah.
Yeah. You need someone to help you through that one.
Yeah. It's not
them spiders come out of nowhere as well.
And that's the thing. It's like it's genuinely like, well, I probably can figure out. It's like, no, you can't. You're not going to understand what you're looking for. Well, I know a spider. It's like no. Right. Moving on. Blade Runner 2049 Arrival. 2 science fiction films up against one another. One is a long-awaited, belated sequel to Blade Runner. Picks up the story in a real-time, sort of 20 years later kind of thing, or 30 years later. And, I'm trying to do this ambiguously. It's a detective story about the origin of, or running down a potential previous replicant in this world, an android, a robotman, and the idea of a possible android baby being born, a sort of unprecedented thing to have happened on a unique model, whether it is or isn't true and who that person may or may not be. That's a fair assessment. And there's some other stuff going on that doesn't actually work, like Jared Leto. But that's fine. We'll come back to that later.
Fucking Jared Leto showing up when he's not wanted.
It does lose some points to me for the Jared Leto inclusion.
Yeah. Arrival is a science fiction novel adaptation about the first contact with aliens, and it takes it a very interesting direction where it's all about language and time and memories and dreams and the restructuring of all these things. And it's a very science-driven thing rather than a, Independence Day style, kill them all, goddamn, that kind of thing. It's very much no. How would this realistically go if you had world tensions with different countries and factions, and these things appeared all over the world, and just this very unease if it was science-led, but even then they were kept on the outside, and it's about communication and all kinds of cool, weird shit.
Yeah.
Both of them are spectacular science fiction films.
Arrival stands out for me because of that focus on communication and linguistics, and the fact that usually you get like we're trying to communicate with the aliens, and you'll get some little like, they have a fix, and then it translates it all and we're all fine, or the final thing message is revealed and it was like, we were here to kill you all along, humans, and they're like, oh no, they were here to kill us all along, or whatever.
They're just food.
The whole point of Arrival, and the main character is a linguist, because the whole point of it is trying to understand what the fuck these things are saying. And that screenshot John Scarrett has picked there is the language. That inky blobby thing is language to these creatures. By the way, those creatures are those weird hand monsters, the squiddy boys in the background. We don't know what the fuck that means or any of it. Just from that screenshot, it doesn't give anything away. It's like, oh my god.
I love the design, or probably therefore the lack of design of the heptapods.
Yeah.
I think as they are the most alien that a film has had in 20, 30 years.
Squiddly diddly motherfuckers that are not humanoids with shit slapped on their face. It's
exactly, yes. Which is, again, going back to what I said earlier about the Star Trek and Star Wars making sci-fi look a certain way for a long time. This is just like, no, these are... they're incredible beings, and I've never been the biggest fan of Amy Adams, but I really like her in Arrival. I think she plays the role really
Gadget,
well.
I figured I liked you. I knew.
Welcome to the crew, Gadget. Welcome to the crew.
Yeah. This is the thing. Blade Runner 2049 has some actors that people don't necessarily give a shit about. Some people don't like Ryan Gosling, and they're like, oh, he's got like 3 emotions, and he just, yeah, whatever. And it's like, no, but he's really good here. Fair enough. But Jared Leto's all in it, and he's kind of being annoying. Ugh. What about this one? Arrival's got Amy Adams. Some people don't get on with her. Some people do think she's underrated. Fair enough. No problem at all. She's given some amazing performances. But also Jeremy Renner's here. It's like, oh, shit. So every time, but having said that, I still think Renner gives a good performance. He's brought in and does a good, and that's always the thing when someone says, oh, I hate this actor, I don't like this individual, I don't like this person's usual stuff. To see them done well, oh, you know, who really pissed you off? Oh, I fucking can't stand Adam Sandler. It's like, okay, fine. Have you seen Punch Drunk Love or Uncut Gems?
Uncut Gems, yeah.
Give him a go. You might suddenly like him all. But like, wow, this guy can act. It's like, yeah, we know he can act. What do you think? Click. I'll say it. Click. So,
oh wow,
ooh, yeah,
we've got a Click stand here. Wow, I
think it's all right.
There's literally tens of you.
There are tens of us. But yeah, these two movies are both fairly close proximity. It's 2016 for Arrival and 2017 for Blade Runner 2049.
Correct, Monday.
I think this is quite clear cut for me, but I'll wait for some stats beforehand.
I think it's clear cut for me as well, but in a way that most people wouldn't expect. I really like Blade Runner 2049, but to me there is also an element of it. Like there is a part of me that has always thought, ever since it was announced, that it was a film that didn't really need to exist.
Welcome to Sequelisers, Gadget.
Yeah. I'm happy that the film is made and it came out the way it did, because it's beautiful film. Like, I mean, the preview image there on the bracket, I have a print of that in my living room.
Yeah,
because I just love those colors, and I love that shot of Joy's hologram kind of reaching down and helping Kay, you know, making him feel better.
You look like a good Joe.
I think Arrival is the more important film for me, because I think narratively it has. I don't want to spoil the point of the narrative, because the narrative,
but it's contained. It's a thing that you can talk about and assess. You don't need anything externally to it.
Yeah, but it's the fact that even to the point where the title card happens at the end of the film, which gives you the point of the film. Yeah. I think, you know, it's one of those few films that, in its nature, requires a rewatch.
Yeah. Great. Whereas Blade Runner 2049 leaves you with like, oh, is there going to be more of this or not? I mean, I don't mind the ambiguous open ending because that's what Blade Runner did, but also like, do we? I have a lot of unanswered questions that I don't think a rewatch is going to give me those answers. Yeah.
Well, with 2049 as well, it ruins the ambiguous question that was left at the end of the original.
That's true. Well, the nature of any sequel is that anything planted in the first one is either picked up and run with or abandoned, and in doing so, you confirm certain theories, and they're dismissed through the mystery is gone. Basically, you rob certain mysteries. So it's like, oh, I wonder what the open. There are so many versions of Blade Runner. There's so many ways to interpret it. And it's like, no, because now we are to pull the story forward. We have this when we're writing our own pictures for other films, for other sequels. In order to take this further, I need to pick up on pieces in the first film and give them validity through the existence in the second one. It's like, oh, are we saying that, you know, the events in Alien 3, 4, whatever it happens to be, does that mean how Alien 1 and 2 pan in? All this sort of stuff. So yeah, you're right. I don't think it robs for anything, because I think it still exists as a stand. You can still watch Blade Runner as a standalone. Blade Runner 2049 is a nice little optional addition. But yeah. What are the numbers, Jack?
Well, before we get to that, the chat is kicking off. We've got Stuart versus Stuart, really? Stig versus Arkham, as they are known in their little nicknames. Stig says Blade Runner 2049 is better than the original. There, I said it.
We're going to hear a lot of shit now, aren't we? Yeah.
And Stuart replies with, "Are you fucking mad?" And then James Wilson replies with, "Blade Runner 2049 is better than the original." And Stig replies, "Yes, James." I will fight you both, says Stuart Main.
I mean,
my God.
Stig has put a comment just 2 or 3 above that makes me just sort of grit my teeth a little bit. So,
hold on, where are we?
At 6 and 23.
6 and 23. Arrival is dull.
Get the fuck
it's pretty slow. Like not
slow and languid pacing is different. Like, dull is bowls. Bowls.
I can totally see why people think it's dull.
Oh yeah, I can see why they're wrong. Yeah.
To confirm, he will actually fight them. You know, he's Scottish, and Stuart Main is Scottish and ready to throw down over Blade Runner 2049 at a moment's notice. So, Stig, you have a challenger, I'm afraid, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's known as the Scottish Inquisition in
the next generation of Stuarts are there, so you find if he dies, he dies. So, you know.
Thanks, Ivan Drago.
Anyway,
so yes, what are the
numbers?
Get
into the stats.
Yeah.
Blade Runner 2049 came out in, as you said, Matt, 2017. It is long. It is 2 hours and 44 minutes long, with a tomatometer score of 88% from the critics, 443 reviews, and 81% from the audience score. So, again, that's quite low for Villeneuve. It's still in the high to mid 80s. And compare that to Arrival in 2016 with a runtime of 1 hour 56. This is the one that is higher than Incendie at 94% from the critics, 435 reviews, and an audience score slightly lower of 82. So the 1% difference in audience score, but 6% difference in critic score to the favor in both senses for Arrival, which I think is very interesting. I think that says a lot about the difference in critical side of things and the smaller difference in the audience opinions there.
Yeah.
So the whole scope of all 8 of these movies is from 94% to the 71% I mentioned earlier from Emily. So
which is spectacular.
They're all certified fresh. Like all of them are.
and as we said before, one of the most consistent directors working at the minute.
Yeah, which is it's almost troubling because you're like, oh god, he's going to have to fall at some point. Something's going to have to happen. He's going to make a film that goes, but then it's out of his system and he can get back to making amazing movies.
As long as it's not Dune Part 2, I'll be happy.
Yeah, Dune Part 2 is going to have a lot of things he's going to have to present as, but I trust him. Oh yeah, I trust him.
We trust.
Yeah, my vote first. So I'm going to vote for Arrival. Gadget, what about you?
I'm going to go for Arrival.
Jack, academic, what are you going for?
This is maybe the hardest pick in the whole thing for me.
Oh.
I rate these films very, very closely. I like 2049 a lot more than most people do, I think.
I like it a lot.
And I fucking love the first Blade Runner, even with Stuart Main being an absolute nutter. I do it just to piss him off, but I do really, really like 2049. And Arrival was one that didn't click with me like 100% the first time, but now I've seen it 3 times, I think. It gets better with every watch, and it is one of the most like emotionally affecting and rewarding films of Villeneuve's career, I think. And I'd have to pick Arrival because it's something refreshing and unique, and I don't think I've seen any other film like it, to be honest.
Fair. I can't argue that. This one I think is going to be quite clear cut, but only because of the nature of it. So, Dune Part 1, big space epic about politics and mining for a drug-like thing called spice, and all the machinations that go on along with the whole thing, and betrayals,
and a very slimy Stellan Skarsgård. Just in case.
Kill them all. In his little vat of goo. And Polytechnic is a very similar film to, as I mentioned, Gus Van Sant earlier, Gus Van Sant's Elephant, which was a sort of telling of the Columbine shootings. This is a very similar thing about a 1989 shooting in Canada, but I think it's a very close, a much closer cued adaptation. Not like it's just inspired by. It's like no, it's that inspired by the actual events, and it's fascinating. Again, I mentioned earlier about the nature of Villeneuve talking about films that are, how can I put this? Cast a certain lens upon female characters, because this particular school shooting killer in a college targeted women specifically, had a really fucked up view of things. And this is a tight fucking film, cleverly done, and Jack will have the numbers,
and it's
77 minutes. Crazy.
Running time is 77 minutes exactly. Yeah. And as you said, Matt, it tells the story of a real shooting that happened in the late 80s, 1989 off the top of my head, known as the Montreal Massacre, where, as you said, a guy goes to a polytechnic school in Montreal, hence the name Polytechnic, and had, as many school shooters do, has a lot of problems with women and is super anti-feminist and mental, and shoots up a school basically. But the way it tells the story, and I'm not spoiling it here, that is not a spoiler, that is the first 5 minutes of the film, because it opens with that moment. It opens with the shooting and then tells you how we got here, and it brings it all back around in a beautiful circle, and you see the shooting again at the end, and it is brilliant, masterful storytelling. It is so interesting to see this absolute monster of a person go on this journey and see the lives of the victims as well. And it really, really paints a heartbreaking picture of the women in particular that are going to this school, going about their daily lives and being fine with it, and everything's, normal day and all that kind of stuff. But you know what's coming the whole time, and it has that tension just lurking in the background for the next 65, 70 minutes. You know what is coming, and you know what is going to happen to these people. And it happened in real life. It adds another layer of heartbreak and harrowing, the harrowing nature of it to it all. Yeah, it's fantastic. And once again, maybe don't watch this back to back with Enemy or anything else. You might need an entire evening to really
I genuinely feel this. Elephant and Polytechnic are really they're the same film, basically. One happening in Canada, one happening in America, and I think they tell the same sort of story by two very interesting visual creatives in the same sort of way. But but also it's black and white and very studenty in how it's shot.
It's also black and white
film, but it's done in a very interesting way. And we said already, just Dune is huge. It's such an epic, and every major filmmaker that we hold stock in terms of actual good storytellers has seen Dune and gone, oh my god, what a fucking accomplishment. And they all want to talk to Villeneuve. And they're like, who changes the industry? Oh, it's James Cameron. Cameron wants to know how you did Dune. Chloe Zhao was like, I want to know how you did Dune. Dune is cinema. That kind of shit. It's a filmmaker's film, I think, very much so. But then Polytechnic's the same sort of thing on no budget. Storytelling still there. So, Gadget, you haven't seen Polytechnic, but you have seen Dune, obviously.
Yeah. I've seen Dune, and it's one of the few films I've seen at the cinema twice. Like, I don't tend to rewatch at the cinema, but me and Stig went to see it on release week when it came out. We even sprung the extra for the IMAX for it, because if it's a film that needs the IMAX. And then I took my partner to see it about 2 or 3 weeks later. And even on a second watch in the cinema, it still blew my mind. Like, I knew the events that were coming up anyway, because I'd read the book so many times. But knowing cinematically the events are coming up, it's just like, oh, it's so good.
Same. I went to an advanced screening beforehand for reviewing it, and then went to watch it in IMAX second time, and because I want more of the sound quality experience and things. Again, it's a long film to get through, and it ends just a touch frustratingly, because at that time, I cannot stress this enough, in the first couple of days of release, we didn't know if it was getting a sequel. And I thought, this film is a solid 5 out of 5. It is a masterpiece of cinema. Unless it doesn't get a sequel, in which case it's going to be the most fucking cock-teasy thing that I can't not see the rest of this. So
it was literally, as me and Stig walked out the cinema, the first thing he said to me when he comes there, I love that film, but the only thing I hated was the fact that we don't know if we're getting part 2 yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank God, like Timothée Chalamet came out and tweeted, Legendary and Timothée came out and were like, don't worry, part 2 is happening. We're like, oh, thank God. Jesus Christ. Oh, I'm so worried. Because Villeneuve, as we said, doesn't particularly make money, and he's never done a sequel before, so it's going to go very wrong very quickly. Thank the gods we're going to get Dune 2. Jesus Christ.
It's such a good adaptation of it. Anyway, like at the time leading up to it, I reread the first half of the novel. I kind of reckoned about where it was going to end, because it's got a time jump in the middle of it. But when I was just casually rereading the rest of it, because you can't start a book and not finish it, after having seen Dune, it's imprinted on me so much that all the character performances were so perfect. Like my internal imaginative mind's eye view of what the characters look like just became the actors in the film. Especially Lady Jessica and Baron Harkonnen, because I think Rebecca Ferguson and Stellan Skarsgård's performances were incredible.
I thoroughly agree, and it's that typical thing that Villeneuve does, where in every film he produces, you go, "This is an amazing cast." And why have you got this person? And that was Momoa being cast. And so, why is Jason Momoa in this? And then, sure enough, as the film is like unfurls, like, God damn, Momoa's good in this. And you're like, someone you don't usually connect with. Yeah,
it's almost like Duncan Idaho was written for Jason Momoa at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy good.
I remember when it was first announced, and you had that kind of that leak, not leak, the kind of drip feed of news announcements of the cast going on. I remember going, "Oh, Timothy Chalamet's Paul. I can see that working." And David Bautista's going to be Rabban. Oh, I like that. Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron. Oh, just like every news announcement that came out. Gurney Halleck's going to be played by Josh Brolin. Like, I was losing my shit every time the news came out about it. I was so excited. Like it was like two one that really.
Yeah, the one that really caught me off guard was Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit. I was like, Charlotte Rampling, really? Like the woman from the 60s and 70s? Like, I feel like I haven't seen her in anything in ages. Like, what? I guess she was in Dexter for a bit. Like,
no,
what's she been doing?
Yeah, when Rampling was like, I thought that could be really good.
Yeah, and then she is fucking terrifying, and apparently she's quite scary in real life. And Timothée Chalamet was legit scared of her because she's been acting like 3 times longer than he's been alive, and she's just like also holding an actual needle to his neck, and absolutely powerful performance from a person who I hadn't like. Oh yeah, what's she been in? Like, and then she fucking steals that show with the Gom Jabbar moment and all the little details of that scene, which is, again, as you touched on earlier, Gadget, that's the scene analysis from the Vanity Fair video that Denis delves into, and it's so interesting. So interesting.
Just the way that Rebecca Ferguson as Jessica is terrified of her builds her up so much. I mean, she's great in Melancholia and stuff like that. So yeah, she's one of those actors who turns up and you go, "Fuck, she was good." But again, I think this is usually at this point, as we said previously, the voting would be the Gadget wouldn't be involved because of Polytechnic.
I haven't given you the stats yet.
Man. Oh no, I know, but I'm caveating. But I think this is going to clink that one because of what it is. I don't foresee it being a problem. But yes, Jack, go ahead with the numbers, please.
I'll start with Polytechnique in 2009. As we said, a runtime of just 77 minutes. Tomatometer score with only 17 reviews, because it's pretty hard to get hold of.
Yeah.
88% on the Tomatometer score with a 76 audience score. And again, I wonder if the black and white and the kind of controversial subject matter could bounce quite a few people off of it.
It's school shooting.
I still think, people are not comfortable with school shootings. Surprise, surprise. Like, it's pretty difficult subject matter, but I still think it's a masterful cinematography and masterful filmmaking. Flying forward 12 years to 2021's June, aka June Part 1, as it reveals in the title crawl sneakily. 2 hours and 35-minute runtime, 83% on the Tomatometer with a audience score of 90%. So lower on the critics, higher on the audience. Pretty much what I would expect from these two movies going up against each other.
Yeah, no surprises there for me personally. I think that's exactly what I'd expect. June's a hard one to get into. Everyone's saying, it could be better. It's a part 1, blah, 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 and all that shit. But no, I think it's glorious. And Polytechnic, again, it's a black and white film about a school shooting. And you're like, the thing that really stands out by Polytechnic is that it's from 2009, but looks like, Latin or something. It looks like it's from the 80s or early 90s. It feels like the time it's set in. It's Again, very European.
Very much so.
Yeah. Just to let's do this. Jack, vote.
Dune.
Right. Good. I mean,
there you go.
Again,
Dune on to the next round.
Yeah, I don't want to because I think we're gonna get some really hard stuff later / now.
This one's going to be difficult.
Here we go.
This is going to be a problem. Okay. Fuck me. Prisoners. 2013. They end up being his first live-action English language movie through release rather than recording. It is a story about two girls who go missing in Pennsylvania. The cops arrest one person. The rest of these other guys in the town, this father and things, go on a different sort of quest.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything about it. I really don't want to talk about it.
The parents try and take it into their own hands,
yes.
and the kind of bounce up against the police officers in that way, and there's a whole tension there, and
has a Mystic River quality to it in that regard. In the you think to yourself, it's good, so. And then goes very different. Sicario is about drug cartel stuff on the Mexican border, agents being placed in, and the idea like, I'm going to go out and do a certain type of job, and then being educated very quickly that there are lines you already cross because you have to in order to survive in this world, and agents and operatives who exist in the thing who don't have any allegiance to anyone, but you kind of have this turn a blind eye situation to get it done because that's how things are done, and it's not right, but it's the reality of living on the border. That's both of them in a nutshell. I'm not going to talk about much else other than that, other than they are beautiful in how they're shot. Some fucking career best performances from everybody in there, on all cylinders. I think that this to me so far is the hardest pick because I find both of them equal. Tim Matum. Sorry, I just noticed Tim's
in the chat. Hey, Tim.
See, everyone is still alive. He's not under the patio.
Yeah, I'm not typing.
It's not just me typing on my phone. Log onto his Google account. It's fine. He's alive.
Yeah. So sorry. I'm going to be. This is going to be really, really difficult. Gadget, you said you had the similar sort of quandary.
Yeah. I mean, they are very different films. I think as I said before, Sicario was one that was like defied my expectations because I expected a pretty run-of-the-mill actiony film, especially given the time it came out as well. Because between 2013 and 2016, there was a run of these just kind of almost kind of Americanized militaristic action films based around kind of like drug cartels and stuff.
Definitely.
But so it really did genuinely surprise me. And these two were also ones that I hadn't. No, I'd seen Prisoners ahead of time. Sicario, I definitely hadn't seen before starting doing this research. So Prisoners is fucking tense. Jesus Christ, that film! I was wrapped up tighter than a spring by the end of it. That's so tense a film. But also, like, I love Hugh Jackman in Prisoners. Like that, it might be for me a career best performance. Just because there's that scene where he's in the police station with Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's being shown the pictures.
Yeah,
and there is just this moment of breakdown, and it's like this subtle facial movement, and then he starts crying. And my God, I was nearly in tears just watching that. I've never seen the man emote like that. I've never seen Hugh Jackman play vulnerability so well.
And he plays it in, like, you can say, but I've seen him like be really. He was great in Logan, and even like Les Miserables. But he's got this, quivering. He's like, yeah, we know that. This is different. This is a different level. It's a
I don't know how Villeneuve gets performances like that out of actors who are by rights very good actors, and he somehow manages to get something more out of them
without torturing them, as a lot of people would.
It's also, again, like I said with Enemy, it's one of the better performances I've seen Jake Gyllenhaal in. That Detective Loki has this kind of incredible subtlety to him.
Yeah,
there's almost like imperceptible rage under the surface. And especially when he's dealing with Hugh Jackman's character, where the two of them are kind of at loggerheads with each other throughout most of the film in very small and subtle ways. But then again, going back to Sicario, like when I was watching it, my partner commented that about halfway through the film, she didn't like Emily Blunt's character throughout it. Thought that she was making poor decisions and being an idiot for a lot of it. And it's not kind of until you get to the end of the film, it's just like, no, she's naive. She's brought on into this mission because she's not going to ask questions, because she is inexperienced. And it leads back to that opening line from one of the opening lines from Josh Brolin: "We don't want the lawyer, give us the girl."
Yeah.
And Josh Brolin is so fucking cool in that film. Bastard, but so good, so cool. The guy can only play cool guys.
You make protagonists unlikable and antagonists likable, and it all merges into this brilliant kind of weird mush in the middle that you don't know who you're rooting for. You mentioned Breaking Bad earlier, Matt. It's totally along those lines to me. The fact that you have like some of the coolest, most terrifying villains, and then I guess Walter White is who we're rooting for. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, he's always killing a lot of people. That's not good. Did he try and kill a pregnant woman? Maybe he did. We don't know. Oh, that's a bit awkward. But he's fighting Nazis, so he's the lesser of two evils there, I guess. Oh no. I love it when films play around, and TV shows and fiction in general plays in that gray area, and it's not just this kind of typical good versus evil, clean cut, black and white kind of thing. You get intricate storytelling, and you get 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional characters that have different emotions and different motivations and all this kind of stuff that
which again, if you think about,
absolutely adore.
If you think about Villeneuve's history and him saying like, "Oh, Dune is my favorite book," and like, yeah, because I'm not spoiling anything.
That explains a lot.
But Paul Atreides is like, he's like a classic go-lucky hero who goes on a hero's journey.
He's Luke Skywalker, right?
Yeah. He saves the day. I mean, it's an amazing love story. There's all this shit.
We're all tugging at our collars here.
The thing there is, it's like, if that's informing you about complexity of character, you're of course going to put that into the things you love and you create yourself. It's like, I can see that every time. I'm just stalling now because I realized that I don't want to have to vote on this. So, Jack, so we have numbers yet? Have you done numbers?
Dive into some stats. Prisoners from 2013, 2 hours and 33 minutes, 81% on the tomatometer from 253 reviews, and an audience score of 87%.
By the end of watching Prisoners, you've felt every single one of those minutes.
Pretty much.
Like not that it's a drawn out film or it feels like it takes a long time to get through, but like just when you get to that final resolution of it, you just have to kind of unclench.
If you have a flight that is 7 hours long and it goes quite smoothly and you watch a couple of films and have a little meal, great. Passes by and you enjoy yourself and think, I'm now ready to start my holiday. If you have a 7-hour flight where it's literally turbulence the entire time, that's Prisoners.
Yeah, pretty much. On to Sicario from 2015, 2 hours and 1 minute, a 92% on the tomatometer from 280 reviews, and an 85 on the audience score. So, again, much higher critical score for Sicario and a slightly lower audience score for Sicario, which I think is very interesting.
I think Jack. Well, no, to be fair, because we skipped over Gadget, should we say Gadget goes first in this one? I think that's fair.
Yes, let's do Gadget.
And by that I mean fair. I mean cruel as all shit.
Cruel.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, I mean, I like crime mystery films more than I like drug cartel films.
Sure,
but there's something about Sicario that was just pulling me in. Like, I don't even like. There are some of the character performances.
Rotten Tomatoes have them both listed as crime/mystery thriller.
Oh, that doesn't help.
Somehow they're both in the same genre on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, I mean, loosely, if you really want to generalize these genres, sure.
Yeah,
it's it is really hard because Prisoners hit more emotional beats for me, but Sicario I found fascinating. Like as the way, I think it's the way Sicario kind of it does that onion thing and it reveals its story as it goes on much further. Whereas Prisoners is almost probably a bit more by the numbers in terms of a crime thriller because it has the twists and turns where you would kind of expect them. And like I didn't guess the whodunit thing by the end because I was just kind of engrossed in it. But when you see it, it says, oh yeah, that makes sense. But that's not to detract from it because it's incredible and full of incredible performances.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for Sicario based on just one aspect, which is the night vision scene, which I think is incredible.
Deacons!
Yep. Roger fucking Deakins. Yes.
I've seen that man direct photography on many things, but that might have been one of the finest moments of his career, managing to get night vision so clear, so pristine, and so tense.
It's the best night vision scene, up there with Silence of the Lambs for me. Like, just fucking spectacular. Tim makes a very good point here. Paul Dano.
Oh, Paul Dano. But actually,
the
that's
fucking Riddler, the upcoming Riddler.
for Prisoners, I also, as I was watching it, just thought, oh, poor David Dalmatian.
Oh, yeah,
that's MacLean rather. He always gets that character, doesn't he?
Pretty much.
Seemingly, yeah.
Yeah. Before I give I will dive into the chat here.
Yes.
Turns out Prisoners was the real greatest show all along. That might be comment of the show right there, General Pandemonium. Yeah. That is fucking spectacular.
I don't know. There's a comment from BM Squared at 648, which where he says, "My friend said she was disappointed with June because it's a classic white savior story, and I had to bite my tongue so hard." Your friend has not read the book and has no idea where it's going, does she?
Yeah. So that was a lot of criticism to being like, oh, it's a book written in the 60s. It brings up all the tropes of, white saviorism and all this kind of stuff. And
I'm gonna save these desert people. Like, but it's like, actually,
yeah. Oh God, yeah. There was a lot of criticism, and I know that is a very valid critique for many stories. But maybe wait until the whole story's been told, and then we'll go from there. Interesting. Speaking of Jonathan Firth Clark, Prisoners gets my vote, which is interesting. I'd go Prisoners, General Pandemonium. The highway scene in Sicario is just top tier tension from Steve.
Oh, it is.
Absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely agreed there. Vote for Sicario from Stuart Main there as well. James Wilson says both great films, but Sicario edges it for me. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's real fucking tough. I'm going to have to go Sicario. I'm going to have to. I agree with you, Gadget. I think everything Prisoners does, I think it is the more emotional film, but Sicario is one of the more visually impactful films. And like I said, something I went in, I think it helps. I went in with such low expectations. You touched on earlier that era of just like generic action-y military bollocks. And it was like, oh, this actually has something to say. Like, this is really interesting. And the fact that Villeneuve basically took on the project because it was set on a border and that has a message and that gives it something to say rather than just, this is a fucking, generic cop action movie, FBI, CIA agent kind of bullshit. I think Sicario is a fucking masterpiece. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, it was the thing that really caught my attention and drew me in to be like, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to this guy. This is something special, and this is a director I really need to kind of keep an eye on going forward, and I haven't been disappointed since. So I have Sicario to thank for that as well. What would you have said, Matt?
It would have been Sicario for me as well. It's close, both spectacular. Sicario tips it. It's things like, for example, they were like, this something about this film is not working, but there's like something missing here. Let's just write a new scene. It's like, what do you mean? That's very risky to do at the last minute. Yeah, no, it's all right. We'll get an idea. We'll do a new scene which illustrates this character just trying to let off some steam, try and just live a normal life, goes to a bar, meets a guy. Who can we get really quickly? John Bernthal. He's free, is he? John Bernthal. Okay. And then you have this whole thing unfold like, oh my God, this is painfully tense. This is uncomfortable as shit. And then the way things unfold from that and all the implications. And that's just a filler scene that they thought, should we just plug this in the last minute? It's like, that right there is like, that's pretty fucking spectacular. So, Sicario for me. We now have a final four.
What a final four.
God damn. Drama, sci-fi, drama. Okay.
We can see where Denis wheelhouse is.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Which again, now you'd think with me, we're like, going to rip through now, but it's so easy. We just go to I don't know.
Strap in. viewers. It's gonna be a long one.
Okay. Incendie versus Arrival.
Yeah.
Who's up first? Jack, me, you.
Well, this is one Gadget hasn't seen.
Yeah,
I like Arrival.
So do I. But it depends on how we vote, is what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
question.
Let's talk about our conflict in a minute. Do you have any conflict, Jack?
I have a clear winner in my brain. Personally.
So do I.
I really, really like them both, but I definitely have a clear winner.
Jack, so do I. This is interesting, and either it's going to be the most like polar opposite, or we're going to just align.
I think they're different. I think they're different answers, Matthew.
I think you might be right, but let's find out. Let's find out, and then we'll talk about why we did what we did. Let's say Jack. Let's say it's you first.
Arrival is my pick.
Yeah, it's on D for me. So fuck.
I fucking knew it. Oh god. Hey chat. Time to fire up the old keyboards and
get to
start voting.
The two Stewarts are about to fight again.
Yeah,
the two Stewarts are gearing up for a fight.
Scotland versus Yorkshire at this point.
Arkham has been insufferable. That's just a fact, right there.
It's going to be the case of I think I'm going to get screwed by a popularity vote from the one people have seen. So
very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
Arrival from Dr. Gain. Arrival from Jonathan Firth Clark. Haven't seen either, so I abstain from Ernie Collins.
Honourable. Well done.
Dr. Gain. Arrival was my top film of 2016 and will always hold a special place for me because it was the last film I saw with my late father. Appropriate considering it explores themes of grief and mourning.
I completely understand that.
Fucking powerful stuff right there.
Yeah, definitely.
We actually have Stuart Main voting for Incendie. I don't know if he's seen Incendie, but he wants to vote for Arrival because it beat
Blade Runner
to really hammer the nail in the coffin or something like that. Is what he said earlier. I don't count that one. We'll get rid of the Incendie vote just to annoy Matt even more.
Yeah,
Bradley Stead voting for Arrival. Canis also voting for Arrival. Tim. I've seen Incendie, but I vote Arrival. That is an official Sequelisers vote right there, ladies and gentlemen.
The betrayal.
Ignoring the fact that literally everyone else
is
voting for Arrival as well.
Sealed it.
And Xenos, who of course is a squid with a top hat and a monocle, says he has to side with his extraterrestrial cephalopod cousins.
Yeah,
it all makes sense. Sense.
That's fine. I can't.
Arrival
accept
in
it.
The finale.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair
God damn.
Ooh.
more collar pulling, more. Oh God, how do we decide this?
I'm not going to ask if there's conflict here because obviously there's. I'm up first for the vote, so I'll just go. I'm just going to go straight fucking into it, so I can sort of talk through my ideas as I'm talking. So here's the thing. I
hate it when you start sentences like that, Matt. I absolutely hate it.
Can anything be said for Incendie? No. Okay. Another mass. So Dune is my sort of front runner pulling ahead. Like, of course it's Dune. But it's a part one. That makes it so hard. It's so difficult because it's like.
You imagine if we had Dune Part 2 on here as well.
I don't know if that make it easier or harder. Yeah, well, I'm not sure. But
or you mush them into one giant 5-hour experience and it just clears the whole bracket and just wins the whole thing.
Yeah. And Sicario did all of that it did within just 2 hours. It's fucking insane. I don't know. I'm okay, fuck it. My vote is Dune.
Fuck, this is tough. Fuck off, Matthew. Just choose one. We haven't got all day.
Too late. I already have.
You chose Dune. Gadget.
I'm having the same kind of dilemma with it. Like, with Dune being kind of the first half of the story, I do think, as it stands, it is a pretty fully formed film in itself.
I would agree.
Part 2, and I'm slightly. I trust Denis Villeneuve completely. I'm slightly scared about how he's going to approach some of the things in part 2.
Yeah,
some of the stuff, but then
gets real fucking weird.
The first half is in fact the easier and more approachable half. It's all just politics and positioning and world building.
Some people have bounced off part 1. So
how do you do part 2 without it being a chaotic mess? Is the question I have.
Yeah.
More precisely, how do you handle Alia?
Oh fuck me.
A 2-year-old that can talk like an adult.
Yeah. CGI.
Yes,
and
but we all
hear me out, Jason Momoa. I don't know how. I'm not trying to make
Jason Momoa's head on a baby.
You that's how it's going to work.
But remember CGI babies? What happened with the Twilight baby? There's your risk.
I mean,
I recently watched all of the Twilight films. That baby's fucking terrifying.
Exactly. And Alia is supposed to be slightly terrifying.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
But aside from that, like Sicario was a story that I don't generally give a shit about American drugs things. Really don't. I like Breaking Bad, but like the whole quasi-political concept around it, and the point that the film is trying to make is not something I generally give that much of a shit about. But it's one of the tensest films I've seen. Maybe not quite as tense as Prisoners, but very tense. And the handful of action scenes it's got in it are brilliant. I love basically any point that Benicio del Toro is in Mexico towards the end of the film. That entire run of events is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because it's quiet and it's quiet and it's murdery but not really actiony, but considered. It's like considered murder, I think is the way to put it.
Yeah, valid.
But yeah, I am really tense because I agree with your point, Matthew, that Dune is half of a story, but the film as it is presented is a fully formed and very well put together film.
Yeah.
You're also being called out by Stig here, Gadget, by the way. You brought Dune to your greatest film of all time on your own podcast. Come on, man.
But I hadn't seen Sicario then.
That's fair.
And you should also point out that I brought Blade Runner to it as well. The first one, but not 2049. But still, I still voted against 2049. To be honest, because it's one of my favorite books of all time, I'm going to go with Dune. It's not necessarily because of. I think it's because they said it was the unfilmable book.
It's what's been accomplished already. Yeah,
and and although that mythical version that was done that was like concepted up in the 60s that recently sold to some crypto bros. Yeah. Kind of want to see that version. Just seeing some of the artwork from that.
Oh, that documentary is fucking amazing. Yeah,
Orson Welles and fucking Salvador Dali and everything else.
Element.
Yeah,
mad.
Jack, what would you have gone for? Oh, that's your anus. Oh no, hang on a minute.
Wait, Jack Shai-Hulud.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And the fear is the mind killer quote on the spine there.
That. That's so good.
With the painted edges there as well. I got this for Christmas. It's my pride and joy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Waterstone exclusive hardback. Gorgeous.
I do like that there are certain volumes of certain texts like Lord of the Rings and Dune and stuff that people have editions of that are more decorated than certain people's versions of the Torah or the Quran or a Bible. it's like we have these really
in the words of Denis Villeneuve, this is the Holy Bible. This is the Holy Bible. So there you go.
Yeah.
You and Denis would trust. I would vote Dune. Yes.
I figured how much. Two big science fiction films that are gonna break us now because
my favorite genre of everything is like cerebral sci-fi stuff, right? Oh fuck. Oh no.
Gadget, you're up first.
Oh fuck you.
Welcome to the show, Gadget. Thanks for being on. You're up first for the finale, motherfucker.
I'll be honest with you. It's a shitty place to be in. But based or depending on what happens next, it's not as shitty as where I'm sitting because it's entirely possible you guys put it and then I have to. So there's it. Both suck.
Yeah, true. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I guess the thing is that they're both cerebral sci-fi, but they're both very different kinds of cerebral sci-fi. Whereas Arrival is very much a think piece within a sci-fi setting. Dune is complicated, hard sci-fi. But actually, to be honest, as I think on it in my head, it is an easier choice. Like Arrival is incredible, it's excellent, but I love Dune more than I love Arrival, and pure heart decision that one. My head could argue that one back and forth for about 3 days, but just going with my heart, it's just like, yeah, fuck it, Dune. Dune's incredible.
The real question is, had you seen Arrival when you did your podcast, Gadget? That is the question from Stig. And
also, I had. Yeah,
as Zenos said. So go on.
Well, I saw Arrival when it first came out, and I hadn't seen it since. So it's one of those ones that because it's not in your brain at the time, you don't think about it when someone says, pick 2 films for our greatest films of podcast. So yeah, just didn't pop to mind at the time. It's
we do that with our inter-season picks, which is currently going on right now. We've got obviously all the episodes lined up, and they'll be like, here's the subject matter we're talking about in episode, whatever it happens to be, episode 9, 10, whatever it is. And we have a Google Doc where we write things down. And usually Jack will say, you motherfucker, you've stolen that from me. What am I supposed to do now?
You've got to me fast.
Yeah, but you have time to research it and think about it and go over and over and over. But equally, in that time before we end up filming or recording the episode, it's like, actually, I'm going to change it 9 times before then because I've had more of a chance to think about and digest and think. Whereas it's sprung on you. You go, this? And you go, the fuck did I say that?
Yeah.
It's just when you, and also an answer you give in one moment can change through personal circumstance. So yeah, I get it. Jack.
Well, I'll give a quick shout out because Stig has just joined our Discord server.
Boosh.
Hey, thanks, Stig. I know Biggie from Modern Escapism is also in there. So yeah, come and hang out with all the cool Modern Escapism people and the 3 of us and all of our listeners on Discord. I've just posted the invite link into the comments section. So you guys, if you're viewing now and you're not yet in our Discord server, please do come and join us. It's a fantastic community of around like 200 people, give or take. Yeah. And they're all really, really cool. You get a full welcoming committee and stuff like that as you join, as Stig has just witnessed, whether that's GIFs or the little wavy robot things in Discord and all kinds of stuff. And Gadget's here as well. Hey, good timing, Gadget. There we go. Everyone welcome Gadget. And there's Grogu. There we go. Gadget, 8-bit. There we go. Officially part of the Discord. We are merging.
There's a Futurama GIF welcoming me in there. I'm in. That's a good start.
There you go. Welcome to the world of tomorrow. Is a regular there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was stalling because this is a very different.
I will say this much: this is a fucking awful pick. It's terrible. Thankfully for me, it's not Ensemble versus Dune. That would have broken.
Yeah, that would have killed you.
I would have had real problems there. I'm not going to lie.
What would you have done, Matthew, just to give me more time to stall for Ensemble versus Dune?
Give me a second.
Oh, now you're stalling for my stalling.
No.
This is brilliant YouTube content.
I would have gone Ensemble, but I also probably would have secretly known.
Ensemble is your favorite Villeneuve film.
It is. I think the emotional narrative, it does what Prisoners does, but it does it better to me personally. Just in terms of how monstrous it portrays our own world and how cynical it is, and yet how full of hope it is. It's just like, it's fucking... Yes, I saw what you did there, Jack. Or did you do that intentionally? It said, the host has muted your screen.
Oh, that's the bracket screen, not you.
Oh.
I can mute that in case there's audio coming in.
Sorry, that was me thinking like, it's like Matt's talking, like, shut the fuck up, Matt.
I can mute you as well, like this. I have the power to do that as well.
Oh my god, you are no one. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Anyway, so that's what I would. Ensemble would have got through for me personally, but in this situation, Jack, has that given you enough time to make a conclusive argument?
Choose, Chambers. Choose.
What's in the box, Chambers?
What's in the box? I'll tell you what's in the box. It's Dune, baby. Dune. Arrakis. It's my pick.
My Dune. Yeah. Yes. And the same for me. I would pick Dune as well. I think Dune is the right answer. That's a weird one. Look at it.
weird career.
What a bizarre journey. What a journey we've been on.
In absolute truth, much like the Spielberg one, if any of these ones had got through to the finale and one, I gone, yeah, fair play. I could see it happening.
I'm happy with any of the final four being the winner. Yeah. Like, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, the only one that would really, really have surprised me is if something like Polytechnic or Enemy won. Not because they're bad, but because they're such a personally invested film. And when you watch it, you go, I love this. I think this is great.
They're the most controversial, I think, as well.
They're quite divisive. Yeah. Not because they're bad, just because people's subject matter and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, good work, gentlemen.
Fantastic.
What do you think in the chat? I know a few people. The spice must flow. Stig is happy. Yes, from Stig.
He really doesn't like Arrival.
You must not fear Dune being the winner. Fear is the mind killer. Hold on. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. There you go. I've got one prop. I'm making the most of it.
It's a good
course.
Yeah.
Stuart Main didn't make it because 2049 didn't make it, and I'm happy enough. Of course. Yeah, I think Dune is an interesting one as a winner. I'm conscious of recency bias. However, I rewatched Sicario and I watched Incendie and Polytechnic for the first time for this, and I've seen Arrival 2 or 3 times since it came out a few years ago. So I would like to say I don't have recency bias, but it could certainly be a factor. And just the fact that, similar to Villeneuve, and as you mentioned, Gadget, Dune was such an important novel for me as a kid. Really kind of getting me into big epic sci-fi stuff, and that's become like my favorite genre, basically. So it's because Villeneuve, of all people, absolutely nailed it so much and really, really dug into the first half of one of my all-time favorite books and one of the best novels ever written, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it was going to be a difficult one to beat.
Yeah, easy. I think without kind of blowing any more smoke up Dune's backside, I think it's one of those things that, because it's an adaptation of such a well-loved novel, it had the potential to go incredibly wrong. Someone made a comment in the chat earlier on before, like they didn't believe Dune was ever going to be a thing. That it just it was likely that it could have just failed.
It's been we touched on Jodorowsky's Dune earlier. Like, it's been in production hell for like 20 years at this point. Like,
and the I think as well, it's such a faithful adaptation that knew what to take out and what to leave in, because there's a load of scenes in the opening of the book which would be dreadful in cinema. Like the dinner scene where Paul's constantly asking Gurney to keep playing different songs on the bassolet and stuff like that. Like, that would have been an awful drag to any pacing that film had.
And it's a true fan who's done it, whereby it's like, oh, what about the garden that Jessica finds? What about more of shout out Mapes and all that sort of stuff? It's like, yeah, you could have done all that. You could have. But as a fan, he's like, but for a big plot point, you only need a handful of beats here, and I think you're going to lose people. I think it's not necessary. And because he knows the book intimately, and because he knows this the medium of film intimately, he is the perfect person in the perfect place to direct this movie, and has come out with it, like, giving me the sense of, like, I said going into this into 2021 that Dune would be my most anticipated movie of the year, and I was looking. So I said that when it was first hinted in 2021. I think Dune Part 2 is still my most anticipated movie of 2023. And like, oh, I really want to see what's going to happen in certain MCU films. Really want to see what, so and so is going to do next. Whatever, creative. Yeah, sure, yeah. But Dune Part 2 is like what I'm working towards. That's like I have to see what's next. I have to see how he's going to do this.
Yep.
I can't. He's cleared the gate so well with this one. I have to see what he does with the next bit.
And if he nails Part 2 like he nailed Part 1, it's going to be the greatest cinematic achievement since the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I don't disagree with that. It's a very bold claim. People say that's out. It's like, no, it is. It will be a cinematic event entirely, but only within a small bracket. People aren't going to understand what it is. And people say, like, you mean more than Endgame? Yes. Endgame was an achievement and accomplishment in its own right, as was the first Avengers film in their own way. But this is different. This is cinema talking. Sit down. I know I'm missing condescending, but it's like, that's what it is.
Right, Martin Scorsese.
No, but that's the thing. Hell. That's true. I love fucking, and we talked this for fucking 12 hours. I love those things. I think they've got their own place. I don't disagree with that. But I think what has been accomplished here opens the door for other things and probably a lot of shitty imitators, but that's not the point.
I think it also opens the door to prove that you can do hard sci-fi again in cinema, because we've had a lot of pulpy sci-fi. We've had a lot of MCU kind of sci-fi, like very actiony sci-fi, very slick, bright special effects and that. But like, just in the same way that the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones did for fantasy, where you had lots of tracks of dialogue and huge political moments and stuff like that, and then maybe a few scenes of casual murder. Dune has the potential to open this up for science fiction, because we haven't had this kind of science fiction probably since the 70s, really.
Yeah.
Ever since, again, I keep saying it's the Star Trek, Star Wars thing. Ever since those came out and sci-fi became cool or actiony, you don't get science fiction like Dune anymore in cinema, because it's too expensive and not enough people go to see this kind of stuff. It's a sit and watch on your telly thing rather than go to the cinema and do.
I always think the mistake with, again, I'm going to piss off a lot of people and I don't care. I think one of the mistakes of science fiction is usually treating it like action. To me, science fiction should be one of two things that I will enjoy the most, get the most out of it. Either it's pure cosmic horror, and it's like the unknowable is vast and terrifying because it is infinite, that kind of thing. Things that Interstellar touches upon but never really gets to, in my opinion. Yeah. And obviously the real true cosmic horror of like entities in space you don't want to meet them, kind of thing. And the other side of that is exploration. And kind of Star Trek here, but more important things like Ad Astra, where it's like, how do I do a really good space movie? Well, okay, you write a movie set in the 1600s where someone's going to America for the first time, and they have no idea what's going to be there in terms of death and disease and return, and the ship that got you there nearly, wrecked itself on the shore. And then when you arrive, you're like, I don't know what's here. That is science fiction, the unknown and the unknowable, and in amongst all of that shit is personality and emotion and politics. And it's like, yes, now I'm here. If you just go, it's fine.
Yeah, which is why, even though I voted against it, like Arrival works for me, because that is one of the best first contact films. I think.
Definitely. Yep. Definitely.
Because it isn't about shooting the shit out of them. It is purely about discovering these aliens and discovering what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
And like the other sci-fi films that I absolutely like, Moon. Moon is one of the best sci-fi films ever made.
Moon
and
it's
got one person in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the voice of another.
Is a robot.
Yeah. Well,
I would say the Sam Rock was fucking amazing.
Yeah. And Arrival does the same thing really as The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original. Yes. Which is just like, we're going to present a world bigger than your own, and you can benefit from it if you just pay attention and stop pissing around with each other. And that's why there's so much posturing in Arrival about nations and prowess, and China falls off at one point. You're like, oh, fuck, we're going to blow this. It's like, that's how this works. Whatever happens, we're probably going to blow it. And as we've seen from most things recently,
I'll touch on some of the comments here before we wrap up.
Sorry, yes, thank you.
All of our plugs and stuff like that. Great one here from Jonathan Firth Clark, one that I wholeheartedly endorse. Dune and The Expanse prove that hard sci-fi is here to stay.
I need to watch The Expanse.
You need to get on The Expanse. It's on Prime Video if you're here in the UK. It's fucking amazing. The books are amazing. The show is amazing. The show wrapped up recently. Oh, they're all brilliant. The show is brilliant. The show recently finished. The last book came out fairly recently as well. It's all fucking fantastic. Get stuck in.
Or latest?
Last. The whole thing is wrapped in books, and the TV show is wrapped as well.
Oh, that might make me actually finally get on board with that. Okay.
Yeah. If you like Dune, if you like interesting political, hard sci-fi stuff, The Expanse is some of the best stuff that has been made of the last 20 years. It's fucking brilliant.
I've got Leviathan Falls is the next on my to read pile, which is the first Expanse book.
Leviathan Wakes is the first one. Leviathan Falls is the last one, I think.
Whatever it is, whatever the first
the wrong
one
way?
is. It's got one written on the side of it. I know it's the first one.
Okay, good. Yeah. Leviathan Wakes is the first one. Yes, you scared me with that. I was like, don't read the last one, Gadget, you fucking maniac.
I like things.
Sorry, just looked up the cover art on Google. Yeah, that's the one I've got. Leviathan Wakes.
Yeah. There's 9 books in that series, and they're all fucking brilliant in various different forms, and tells such a complex, interesting science fiction story that is full of political intrigue and ideological conflicts and exquisite world building and fantastic physics. And I just absolutely fucking love the books and the TV show as well. I'll get rid of that. We're back to us now. A few more comments here. Tim, I would have voted Arrival. Interesting. Of course he would. If I had to guess, that's what I would have guessed Tim would vote. But you're not here, Tim. And as Jonathan says, this is why you can never leave these two alone. We're not alone. We have Gadget, and Gadget made the right decision. So there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Tim and Jack voted Shaun of the Dead through rather than Hot Fuzz or Scott Pilgrim.
What?
Oh, if you missed it, I don't want to spoil it, but technically, there was a Edgar Wright bracket, and I wasn't involved. I had shitty internet connections, and I wasn't very well, and I was editing, and all kinds of things were going on, so I had to just observe at times, and I was not happy with the outcome. But that's how it is. That's how it is.
It's your fault for sleeping on it, mate. It's not my problem.
I will fucking box you when I see you.
I will mute you right now, Matthew Stockton. There you go, he's muted. I also heartily endorse The Expanse, said Tim, because Tim is the best of us. What are you saying, Stockton?
Nothing.
It isn't a Sequelizer stream if it doesn't end with a crime against cinema. Welcome to Sequelizers, everybody. I also have if Dune 2 can stick the landing, it will be seen as probably the greatest sci-fi film of all time. As we talked about, I think comparing it to Lord of the Rings is a really, really good comparison. You brought up there, Gadget.
Just in terms of adapting a really dense text that is slightly reader unfriendly
and forming it into a masterpiece.
And the fact that one doesn't exist on its own is are you watching The Lord of the Rings? It's like, well, I might watch The Two Towers. Yeah, and if you enjoy that part more than others, but you're still watching all of it, right? It's like, yeah, pretty much am. Same with Dune. This will be one film.
Yeah.
In 2 parts. Yeah. Or 3, how many they end up doing it, but yeah. Interesting.
Canis comes in with, I would have gone Arrival purely because Dune is a part 1, and I think multi-parters need to be judged as a whole. That's fair.
Yeah,
we don't have a choice, but So some great stuff there, and I think Dune is a worthy winner, even if people are pissed off, because that's what we do on these streams. Apparently, we spend the whole time fixing bad movies on the main podcast, and then we come over and piss everyone off with our opinions on this show. So, yay! Prepare your Twitter and stuff for hate mail there, Gadget. I'm sorry in advance.
Oh, it's fine. I get so much of it anyway. Most people just don't like me head. Fine.
I was thinking earlier, like, if it's just the three of us, it's almost like you are the love child of Matthew and I, especially with you down there. Like, you've got my glasses, but you've got a better beard than me, but you've got a beard. But it's kind of like if you took Matt's beard and put it on top of my beard and then shaved head like Matthew, you're like the beautiful Matt Jack love child.
It is a picture merge, isn't it? Yeah.
Good point. If you took one of those like merger picture things of Matt,
it's like there are 3 people in this picture. Who is it? And you pull it apart and like, okay, one is Jack, one's Matt. Who's the third person? The third person is James McAvoy, because I think you like James McAvoy. That's all I'm saying there.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I can see what's the sequel to Unbreakable thing? The third Glass. And Split. Yeah. When he goes all bald and ripped, I can definitely see a McAvoy.
I mean, I'm going to the gym these days, so I'll let you know when I get less fat.
But where can the lovely people on the internet find you and Modern Escapism and do Dragon's Dream of Scorched Sheep, Mr. Gadget?
Okay, well, this is going to be a list. So if you want to send me particular abuse about the shape of my head, fine. That's at Gadget8bit, as you can see on the stream there. You can follow Modern Escapism at Modern Escapism on Twitter. We also have a website, which is modernescapism.co.uk, because we're too cheap for a .com. Apparently it was going to be hundreds of pounds. We weren't interested in that. No siree.
Nobody wanted Sequelisers, funnily enough, because we just made that
the word doesn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how you get cheap domains, mate. Just make up words. It's fine.
You can find Do Dragon's Dream of Scorched Sheep at Scorched Sheep. All the details are on the website as well. There's links to our lovely merch store, to our Patreon, to our Discord, where you can argue with Stig about his opinions on Arrival, or anything film related. The funniest thing is, if you come into our Discord and start slagging off Paddington 2, Stig will be there immediately. It's fucking hilarious.
To be fair, Paddington 2 is great. Why would you?
I mean, it is great. Yeah. Well, we have people that just like to trigger him. It just happens.
Again, our Discord, we have the exact same thing, so I fully understand it. I'll leave it well alone.
Agreed.
But you can find all the links are on modernescapism.co.uk. You can find both the podcasts on anywhere good pods are cast, or also a place where bad pods are cast. We do Modern Escapism every Thursday. Do Dragon's Dream of Scorched Sheep is every other Friday. So yes, we will be recording tomorrow night for this week's episode, which will be fun. We're talking about British movies this week. It's the best of British cinema.
Oh, nice.
Ooh,
nice.
And I think we got some slightly out of the box choices. But some ones that when you think about it, that was a fucking banger. So
British has produced some amazing content. I'll be very curious to listen to that.
Yeah, well, we talk a lot about Hollywood stuff, and especially after the conversation we had with Jack and Tim last week, just about how much time we spent gushing over Mark McDonagh. It's like, okay, I mean that's Irish cinema, but British cinema, ooh, what can we talk about there? Because we don't really get to talk about it that much.
Yeah. I always point that out, because we just to go on tangent, I apologize, but I'm always pointing out when somebody says, I don't really like foreign films. And it's like, oh, is it the language barrier? Like, maybe. So like an Australian film, I probably wouldn't get on with it. What's your favorite movie? And like, oh, I really love this. And like, that's an American film. Yeah. And you're British. Yeah. That's a foreign film then, isn't it? Well, not really. It's like, no, it literally is, because all the reference points of the culture and thing is different to yours. It's like, yeah, I guess it is. It's like, yeah. But again, not to disparage against other things, because I think the world over there's amazing cinema, but British cinema has some just pure gems.
Yeah, absolutely. And just even just sitting thinking about the films that we're going to bring up for there, it's like you think we put out some very unique and very strange films, or some for instance, one of my early picks, not the one I'm picking for the conversation tomorrow, but it's pretty close to it, but was Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Which is a film that is absolutely incredible, but not many people will bring it up when you think of it when you think British cinema, but it is one of the finest British films of the 90s. Absolutely wonderful film.
Yeah, a really earnest representation of London as well. Shot in London,
but also with this, without getting into it, like one of the things I love most about that film is the fact that, apart from the fact they carry mobile phones, you can't tell what time it's set in, because the cars are from the 60s, the music is all from the 60s, the look of their clothes, the look of the film grain on it, and it's only really at the very end when you see one of them holding a mobile phone, you think, oh, it is actually in the 90s.
yeah, definitely.
Just tickles me.
Pretty much.
But
that's as you mentioned at the top of the show, Gadget, last week, Tim and I were on the show. Which was lovely. We had a little crossover of our own. And here's a little teaser clip for you in case you need to be enticed into listening to Modern Escapism. Here's a little clip.
I've had a tough week this week. I've started no less, I've written down 10 games and 6 films, and I've stopped. I've not continued.
Hell, mate.
Have you finished any of them?
No, I couldn't. I just couldn't So
we have a word for that on our show. It's called doing a Matt.
Well, I've been doing
the third sequelizer who's not here, our co-host Matt. Well, basically, like, okay, we've got this topic. We'll do 3 each. You know, blah blah blah. Matt comes in with 15 honorable recommendations, honorable mentions going on, and then we'll eventually get to his top 3. We're like, you need to keep it to 3 because we already 3-hour shows, Matt. Fucking hell. Yeah. So that's what you're doing, Ariels. You're doing a Matt sequelizers balance.
But Matt probably finishes them. I stopped. I started like.
I guess that is our lovely host Oodles. You could hear there in dire straits because his ADHD wouldn't let him finish anything.
and even when Matt wasn't a guest on the show, he was still present in spirit.
I'm everywhere.
Still talking about you, Matt.
I'm everywhere.
It's the mustache that makes you omniscient.
Exactly.
It's true.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking
Speaking
of being everywhere, Matt, how can people find you on the internet?
Stogs, STOGHC on the Z. Thank you, America.
STOGHC. Why did you go Russian there as well?
I don't know. I'm tired. STOGHZ on all the various social media platforms. You can go to theredrighthand.co.uk because I am also far too... Actually, no, that's not true. I was too cheap to buy the .com, but it was offered to me at one point, and I was going, nah, I'm good. I've already branded it .co.uk for so long now, I can't be asked. That's one of my reviews. My most recent one was Nightmare Alley. I gave I wouldn't say scathing, but an interesting appraisal of it. It's Del Toro, another fucking master, but also Cheesemint.com is where you can go to see all the things that we make film-wise. We were going to be shooting tomorrow morning, and I got a text message this morning. I said text message was a WhatsApp thing, but saying that one of the actors has COVID, which is fucking terrible. He'll be okay and stuff like that, but it's still like, for fuck's sake, kind of thing. It's just like, it's still hampering and hindering me. So you can go to those things. I also do another podcast, so Sumo Drop, which is every other month. So it's January, March, and we track all the various sumo wrestling tournaments.
Sumo wrestling stuff.
Yeah. Jack,
Nice.
if people want to fondle you digitally, is that a thing people can do? And if so, where?
Absolutely not.
Then
Unless
get
you
on
go
it.
to my OnlyFans
Tron
page.
World.
I am JLW Chambers on Tron World and The Grid, and also Twitter, Instagram, all that other bollocks. You can, of course, go to sequelisers.com for everything for us. I mentioned the Discord earlier. That's an easy link to the Discord. You can go to our merch store. You can go and find our Patreon page, which is also patreon.com/sequelisers. And if you'd like to hear me talk about SEO and digital marketing stuff that I do for a day job, I also host a podcast at work as well. You can find that by going to search.withcandor.co.uk, where me and my co-host Mark break down SEO and PPC search marketing stuff from the week. And this coming week is my first solo show, my first interview. So that should be interesting.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm hosting another podcast and it's weird because I'm doing it for my day job.
You have to be all corporate and not swear. And
I know I can't swear. I had to edit out swears and stuff. It's great. Oh, well, I can make my boss look like an idiot or a very clever man. And I chose a very clever man because I like to keep my job. So,
Such is the power.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back next month at the end of February. We'll have another special guest, which is Harley from the Fundamentals podcast. We're very much looking forward to having Harley on. I know he has crossed over with the Unequal Sequel guys, and they kind of got us in touch with them. So it's a big kind of conglomeration of podcast families. We're all merging and joining together and having a great time. And last of all, thanks for joining us, Gadget. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You're like our love child. You fit in so well.
Stop telling him that it's creepy.
No, absolutely not.
You're going to give him scarring.
I can already feel the scars starting inside my skull.
But the thing is,
Jack.
Jack to every guest, off camera or on camera. You're my love child. I don't
say that to everybody. I say
know you don't. I know.
He's like our love child with a better beard. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for watching, everybody. Yeah, you've got the good beard genes. We'll be back next month. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.